Well, hello. We are going free again. This is just going to be a brief going free, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you all can hear me okay. Let me check over here and make sure we have the screens up that we need. We just had a fantastic show over on PWR with Mark Collette, and we had, of course, Mike over there and the great Dr. Patrick Slattery. Jesus says, hey, Jason, I think the screen just left. Let's see. Pull these up so that I can see all of my friends. Not my friends in low places. We were just talking about the prince saying that he met so many wonderful people when he was hanging out in the pedophile rings. And that's why he doesn't feel terrible that he was a friend of Epstein. So, what a hero that guy was. And of course, we tried to start off the show with some talk about the Groypers. Now, we're going to be talking about the Groypers again, some suggestions for them later this evening at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with the amazing and assiduously working Jared George and Semiagog, who is Oliver. There's some suggestions. It'll be our weekly checking in with you all. Let me see who all is here and see if everybody can hear me. Poseidon is here. Great to see you, my dear brother. I think Underhill is here. I thought I saw the name flash by. Sean. I'm guessing everybody's hearing me okay. I don't see any issues on this end. Machiavelli sucks. Yes, Underhill is here. How long is brief going free? I say this all the time that this is going to be brief. I'm going to truncate this one. Well, and then it ends up being, and obviously the plan is to have perhaps a brief get together because of all the things that I have to do. But then when I get with all of you who I care so deeply and dearly about, and you have your questions and then you share your thoughts with me, and I want to celebrate that. The things that are going wonderful. I want to mourn with you all about the things that we should mourn and spread this curative contagion as far and as widely as we possibly can. Happy Warrior is here. Great to see you. The great Outrageously Inoffensive is here. Rising Stars, one after the other. There is, talk about Rising, Dragon Rising. Mandy is here. LG is here. Great to see you. Ein Krieger is here. The great Ryan Manley. As that Carmichael is here. The great Train Kelby is here. So many great participants in the community. Excuse me. I see Jay Esom, Quebecois, Lincoln, Beer Hall Putsch. Great to see you. Tipsy McStagger. Yes, great to see you. So I don't know. We'll try to keep it. We'll try to keep it short. I just want to cover a couple of topics because these this past Sunday, just days ago, and as I said, just a couple hours ago on PWR, there's Laurel is here. Hello to you over on the gardening channel. Kabuki on the gardening channel. Ambitious, great to see you. The Joker. We were talking about Discord, and the one thing that the anti-whites are magnificent at, how we should treat Discord, especially the anti-whites in the regime. How we should handle Discord, whether it is from someone who is militant and who has been inserted or inserted themselves for the purpose of disruption, or whether it's somebody who is just suffering character flaws and they can't help themselves, so they have personal things they have to work on, and if they cause discord, we have to protect ourselves from that sort of thing. We can have sympathy for such individuals, and we should, especially if they are self-destructive. But you never, and what we see all of the time in relationships, people's personal and work relationships, is that they end up, especially our people, they end up forcing themselves to suffer in order to put up with someone's bad behavior. And we don't have the luxury of doing that here. This is the service to white well-being is not something that we have infinite amount of time to implement, to spread across the West. It's something we have to get to business at doing. If you have a, there's so many analogies we could give here. I mean, like 20 just came to me. It feels like dog sled teams. You got the dog that's not pulling. He's pulling in the right direction. He's pulling in the other direction, or being dead weight on the line, or any number of analogies you could imagine. It's best to just cut that individual node or element or person or animal or whatever it is, to just cut them loose. If that dog, if that husky or whatever it is that pulls the dog sleds in the, what is it called? What is that race that they have, the Diderot or something like this, where you're racing with the huskies? Maybe somebody knows and they can tell us. So it's an amazing event. Hopefully we'll have so many people serving white well-being up in the frigid north that I'll be able to make a visit up and spread white well-being and maybe catch the dog sledding. Iditarod, Laurel says. Yes, so that's what it is called. Great. That would be magnificent to witness that. Looks like LG came in. Europa sends RG. So yeah, if you can imagine, this is the case, whether it's military or business, it's just human interaction. There are certain things that hold true with human beings, with the human animal. And if you want something different, you need a different species. People, unfortunately, will very often hope for different outcomes, or they'll hope that human beings aren't a certain way, or they'll hope that a certain instinct isn't going to result in the same outcome again and again and again. But hoping is not strategy. Hoping is not planning. Hoping is not winning. Hoping is not a plan. So when you have a problem, and we, as I say, we could use, we don't use business analogies because this is a business. We use business analogies because if we used militaristic ones, the anti-whites would say, go and deprive them of their right to self-defense. They're talking about military things. It's just, so that's why we very often use analogies in business. And when it comes to a business, if you have troublemakers, if you have somebody inciting discord in the ranks of the people working for that objective, which is to sustain the business, to increase the business, whatever the particular objective is at the moment, you just have to cut them free, and you allow them to be successful someplace else, or you allow them to go and do that personal work that they have to do before, or so that they can get better, and maybe one day they can come back and be a better person, learn from it. You don't suffer them. And that, as I say, is too often the case. So we have a couple of things that I'm going to talk about briefly. But the first thing that I want to talk about, and then I'll take a look at what you all are saying. And there's Heidi. I see Heidi is here, which means that probably Ray is somewhere. And I know I am going to be looking into the D Live, I guess today, so that we can set up all of these wonderful things. I want to be able to get back and thank everybody who donated on D Live, and we will absolutely make that a priority, because we recognize everybody for their contributions, no matter what they are, no matter how big or small relative to the observer they may seem. You know, remember, I've talked about this before, a $100,000 donation from Mr. Pi is pitifully small, but a $1 donation from somebody working for a living and making $25,000 a year is colossal. So we recognize every contribution from the perspective of the contributor rather than from the observer. Does that make sense? Daniel is here. Asking, what do you think of the recent Quran burning in Norway? I haven't heard about it yet. Been very busy. I drove the whole night to get back here, to go to work, to not sleep, to have the car worked on, to rush in here in time for PWR and scribble out a bunch of notes with a little bit of help from some some good people. And so I thank them all for that. And here we are. Heidi says, Ray is in the ghetto. Don't forget to hit your daily check-in and claim lemons, top left corner. So I've got to claim, get my lemons. Oh, I see. You currently have so many lemons and you've got to claim. So I got to get them. What happens, Heidi, after I get the lemons? Do I have to do something else at that point? I guess if you don't claim them, I think you said the last show, among other instructions, that they somehow disappear, which would make absolutely only sense to thieves. How can they make your money disappear? I guess that's like pretty much all banks. Sir Charles says, greetings, Jason and everyone. Great to see you. I see Raymond. There he is. Well, looks like the D Live for me is reloading, so we will have that up. Azus, less discord, more harmony. No, precisely. Resurrection Jose also mentioning the Iditarod. Seth Jones, very nice knot, Jason. Well, thank you very much. When I worked on the Hill, in fact, I talked about that a little bit in the show earlier. It's funny because when I worked in the Nerve Center for the conservative movement in Washington, D.C., the Hill, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize because I know we have an international audience. The Hill is the slang for the center of the federal government in the United States. So if you could work just in Washington, but if you're working on the Hill, that means that is where governance is taking place. And of course, you had the people who they couldn't tie a tie, or they would go the other direction and they would try to do something outrageous when it comes to a knot. It's better to be as a well-dressed man, to be simple and sharp in what you put together than it is to try to be wild. Shauna says, exactly, Jason, you say it well, brother. Well, thank you very much. Snow Shadow is here. Great to see you. Our great new poet. Great to see you. Seeing Red is here. Hello, fine sir. A big hello to you. Lincoln Hawk. That's a cool name. The Joker is here. Well, no dancing on my car. All right, let's see. Let's go ahead and get rolling. It appears that I have... Oh, it's telling me again to get my lemons. I see. The screen has now... Balance, okay. Payment method. Well, I guess I've got to put in a payment method. Is that what I've got to do to be able to collect my lemons? We'll figure that out, ladies and gentlemen. Don't want to lose my lemons. Don't want to lose the money that people have contributed. How outrageous is that? To lose that much. But the first thing I wanted to do is we got to get a round of applause and some raucous emojis for a gentleman. You all know that I have been asking that we support each other, that there's no support shaming here in service to white well-being. And that means that our content creators, our artists and the like, that they should be supported in whatever way that you possibly can. We're not going to make each other rich. They don't expect to be made rich. They just want to be appreciated for the contributions, and that is the moral thing to do. So as I've said and will continue to say, there's no support shaming here. Anyone who support shames needs to be shamed for support shaming. You don't see that in that little group that has so much power, and you don't see that in all of these other non-white groups who fight for the well-being of their peoples. You don't see any of those folks coming forward and saying, oh, you're not legitimate if you take these multi-million-dollar donations. That makes you illegitimate. No, they realize that the money that comes into these institutions that are clearly doing the good work for their people empowers that institution, which empowers their people and thereby enriches themselves. We are Western kind. We are Westmen. We should be bright enough to get that. So anyone who's coming into our midst and support shaming needs to be told first, educated. Perhaps they're just ignorant on the issue, that we don't do that here. If they continue to be a problem after learning that that is not what we do here, then we can politely invite them to leave. So a great gentleman who is his name is going to remain anonymous at the moment, reached out to me And he said that he will give $5 gifts to the 10 creators of my choice. So $5 gifts to the 10 creators of my choice. And as I say, this was because I was asking all of us to reach out with a bit of support for those who create content. So a big round of applause for that gentleman. Thank you so much for helping to bring this desire to reality in the service to white well-being, that we are indeed giving a pat on the back to everybody who is doing a good job for white well-being. So thank you so much for that. Now let's get on to, I will keep an eye on your questions, and thank you all for the applause and the raucous emoji. And Johnny Scythe is here. Great to see you. And Syntheside is here. Great to see you. I will be keeping an eye on both YouTube platforms, and make sure if you want to tag me on gardening, that it's the Gardening with NWG. On No White Guilt, it is tagged with No White Guilt. It will appear orange. It'll bring my attention to it. Of course, as is always the case, everyone who super chats will have their question or statement read, and I will be keeping my eye out for that. And I ask the mods, please do the same, and appreciate that very much. I'm just refreshing these to make sure that we are good. We already had a super chat from Unknown Californian, super chatting $40. Thank you so much, my dear friend. $40 to the protection of white children across the West. Bless you, my dear friend. So let's go ahead and move into this. And I imagine there might be some questions as we roll through this. And I ask my mods again, if you could please help me keep an eye on super chats, especially if they take place on the live. Please bring my attention to that on over here on YouTube, and I'll keep an eye on what you all are saying. So the first thing I want to start off with is, what is a cult? You may ask yourself, why are we asking what is a cult? Jay Easom says, this will be awesome. Well, thank you very much. Why are we talking about what is a cult? Well, you'll see. The first thing I want to do is thank the sweet lady who found this checklist, a 10-point checklist for me from this authoritative group that studies cults, that records the histories of cults. I'm not going to be giving you the name of this particular entity, because it is, as most of these entities are, vehemently anti-white. So anybody who has an opinion, any group of people who opposes anti-whiteism in any shape or form is listed on this website by these anti-white pigs as being a cult. So if they've gained any sort of notoriety and they oppose anti-whiteism, then according to these, and their picture is, the photographs of these people is on their site. I'm not going to give it to you. We don't want to have that be a reason why YouTube decides to censor me into oblivion, but for some sort of bullying or harassing. But you see the picture and you know why, that it is vehemently anti-white. It is the most revolting group of people that you could imagine. Clearly, you can see the anti-whiteism written all over their sick and degenerate faces. But nonetheless, they have done quite a bit of research on cults, and they have a thorough checklist here that I will be taking a look at. So make sure I didn't miss anything that I wanted to mention here. I was also going to, the original plan was to, in defining cults, was to share with you specifically anti-white cults, of which there are a great many, of which I was surprised there were so many. A cursory examination, somebody out there who has the time to research, you're not doing something else for white well-being, who has the time to research anti-white cults. You could make a video about them. There are numerous, and there are a great many lies that have been told about them, and attempts to play them down. The equivalency fallacy is used in every scenario, but there are a great many of them out there. And if you have no strikes on your channel and you're not worried about perhaps bringing the ire of the anti-whites down upon you for mentioning anti-white cults, then perhaps you could go for it. Be careful with your wording, and perhaps you can fly under the radar and get a lot of great information out there. But suffice it to say, even though I've got to start with this may or may not be true, incalculable number of white people have been murdered, raped, abused, etc., by anti-white cults around the entire world in the West. And when you look into their leadership, it's also of these cults, it's also not a big surprise. There are a great many coincidences that you will discover in one shape or another. But I realize that in naming these and talking with you all about these different anti-white cults, that I would probably end up having the video censored. So I'm definitely not going to be naming any of the particular anti-white cults today, zebra murderers. True or not true, you'll have to look into all of these things for yourself, but I'm definitely not going to be naming any of these things. When you look into them for yourself, you'll find out whether or not zebra murderers, there are these cults that are out there. You can look at it for yourself. So we're going to start with the checklist, and looks like we have a super chat over here. By the way, Entropy, it should be up and running, and it is. So if you want to jump on over on Entropy, please do so. Remember that when you super chat on Entropy, a smaller amount is taken from your super chat than is taken on YouTube, and that smaller amount goes to the good folks who have built Entropy for us and who continue to work on it and continue to build the flesh out, if you will, the platform, so that we'll have more options, more use, and it will be, I guess, have more survivability, especially when the anti-whites take steps against that platform. So keep that in mind when you are super chatting as well, and when you want to just watch the stream. Angharad Celtic super chatting $40. Thank you so much, my dear lady. A great participant in service to white well-being, isn't she? Writing greetings to the best people on earth. I turned my sister and teenage nephew to this channel. White teenage boys need to know they are loved and appreciated. Thank you so much, my dear lady. That is beautiful. That is a magnificent thing. That is exactly what we want to be happening here in service to white well-being, is that we reach out to those we care about, those who have the ability to potentially go free, to heal them of their white noir. And as you said, Angharad Celtic, that the teenage boys today, our white boys, are the ones who are most likely to end up in poor states, in impecunious states, in psychological states where they are committing suicide, where they are under the impression that is largely true, that no matter how hard they work, they are going to be discriminated against and can be discriminated against, persecuted on the basis of their race, and particularly that they will become white men in this anti-white narrative, the absolutely most hated beings on planet Earth, the most demonic beings on planet Earth. So yes, fantastic. Thank you so much for doing that, and for all the good that will come about as a result. So a big hello to your sister and your nephew. Thank you both for being here. And I can promise you this: there's a lot more ability than inside of you than you realize. It is being hampered, undermined, crippled by things we call meme pathogens that you have been infected with by being just alive in the West today. And as you treat these, you will begin to find a new power inside of yourself, as many people have been attesting to week after week after week. Last week, we had what was it, this past Sunday or the Sunday before? We had a young lady who said she finally got up the courage, and that was a result of freeing power that she had inside of herself that was already there, that was latent, because she's a member of our people. But she got up the strength to leave an abusive relationship, and God bless her. Thank God she is in a new place, and much better off than she was prior. So let's see, make sure I didn't miss anything, and we will continue to roll. Daniel says, how about the EU? How about that for an anti-white cult? Yeah, exactly. In fact, sorry, I'm still getting over this. Razor blades. But that's not going to stop us. So let's keep the show rolling. Teddy Net News says hi over on the Gardening Channel. Great to see you. Pierce Taylor is there. Good to see you. Ambitious. Is that Americana is here? Great to see you. So the first thing I'm going to read out are these are the identifiers of cults. The group displays excessively zealous and unquestioning commitment to its leader, and whether he is alive or dead, regards his belief system, ideology, and practices as the truth, as law. The group is elitist, claiming a special exalted status for itself, its leaders, and members. For example, the leader is considered the Messiah, a special being. MLK. MLK. Hold on. Just got to clear my throat. Obama. Obama, just clearing my throat. So those are, as an aside though, in going free, there is no leader. We've talked about this time and again. So that's actually a great strength that we have here. There is no, as actually Mark gave the example of the tent, the center pole. There's no center pole that you knock it out and everything falls down. We talk about, last week we were talking about everybody being on the field, participating, not one lofty stage with an individual in the center of it that can be smashed to pieces. So we encourage debate here in Going Free. We want to weed out what it is that people are experiencing. We want to always, and this is how I live my personal life, is that I always yield to reason, logic, and evidence in all things. So if there is, and this is how it's been my whole life, that's how we have such a powerful assortment now of meme curatives that we can give to people and that you all can use and have successfully been using. The reason why that is because I have always yielded to reason, logic, and evidence in all things in service to white well-being. It has never been in service to me. It has never been in service to a particular group. It has always been in service to white well-being. So when something superior comes along, then I want to something that is already in place. Then I want to immediately adopt that so that we can have a more powerful position for the work that we are doing for our people. Does that make sense? We have disagreements all the time. We have Jared George and I disagree, and then we go back and forth. Sometimes he ends up adopting my position. Sometimes I end up adopting his position. Same thing has happened with Mark and myself and many others. We want there to be disagreement. We just want to have disagreement in pursuit of white well-being. So there's a big difference in disagreement that will undermine service to white well-being and a disagreement that is taking place because it's a perception of context, or because, and therefore, if a perception is off, then the prescription can't be right, or the perception is right, but the prescription might be a little off. It can be made superior. We want that information. So that's just an aside. The next one is questioning, doubt, and dissent are discouraged or even punished. Well, that's what we were just talking about. It's the true sign of a cult, I guess, is where they don't allow you to question anything. It's the exact opposite of Going Free. As I say, we specifically ask for people to give their opinions, positions, experiences, and then we work through that. That's one of the things, one of the reasons why we're gearing up to take phone calls so that we can explore these things. And like I said, we are teaching each other because we are being infected all the time by the world outside of us. So we have to keep each other on the right path toward white well-being. And that means that we have to be using the right verbiage. That means we have to be using the right dialectics. When we misspeak, when we use their verbiage, when we remain on their field, the anti-white field, we have to gently correct each other. That is the right thing to do because we love each other. Now, if you have a destructive idea to our endeavor to serve white well-being, then you're going to be asked to leave. That is not helpful when you have a destructive idea. It's like if I'm building my house and we're framing out the house and you decide that using duct tape around the joints is going to be better than nails, I'm going to invite you to leave. I don't want you working on the house anymore, because that is going, whether you can see it or not, that is going to be damaging to the house. Now, if I say to such a worker, look, duct tape is not as strong as nails. I know you love it, but it's not going to last forever. It's not nearly as long as nails. The joists are not going to be able to hold the weight that the nails will be able to hold. And here are the reasons why. And you still say, well, I really want to have a conversation about using duct tape. I'm going to put some over your mouth, and then I'm going to push you to the curb so you can get the hell off the property and stop damaging the work of building the beautiful home that we are building here, not for us, ladies and gentlemen, but for our children and grandchildren yet to come. We're not going to let anybody get in the way of that, period. And that is a point that I am absolutely intransigent on. I am adamant. So cults also have mind-altering practices, such as chanting, speaking in tongues, and debilitating work routines are used in excess and serve to suppress doubts and the group and its leader. Could you imagine being in such an environment, Yahweh ben Yahweh, as to have to be forced to work all the time and speak in tongues, Yahweh ben Yahweh? You would leave immediately if you were in such a especially rabidly anti-white cult, Yahweh ben Yahweh, as many others would leave. They would get out of such a cult. The leadership dictates, sometimes in great detail, how members should think, act, and feel. For example, members must get permission to date, change jobs, marry, or leaders prescribe what type of clothes to wear, where to live, whether or not to have children, how to discipline children, and so forth. This is signs of a true cult, Jonestown, ladies and gentlemen. Signs of a true cult, Jonestown. The group has a polarized us versus them mentality. Now, this is actually an interesting one. The group has a polarized us versus them mentality, which may cause conflict with the wider society. What is interesting about this particular symptom of a cult is that it is what is called a supportive symptom. In other words, if you don't have an indicative symptom, which is something that says, okay, because of X, this is a cult. If you then have a supportive symptom, you can then say, this is more evidence that this is a cult that we're looking at here. But you can't take a supportive symptom and say, because of this supportive symptom, we now have a cult. Because if you did with this particular symptom of a cult, that would hold true for every sports team supporter and sports club, every scout troop, every business, every country. Everything is an us versus them scenario where there is any competition whatsoever. And so this is what is considered a supportive symptom, not an indicative symptom. Big difference there. So you've got to keep that in mind when you're looking at the symptoms of what is a cult. The leader is not accountable to any authorities is another symptom of a cult. Well, certainly here in service to white well-being, we are all accountable to the anti-white elites and the regime, because they will lock our asses right up if we get anywhere near the line of illegality. So we have to stay very far from that. There's absolute accountability here in service to white well-being, a very big difference there. The group teaches or implies that its supposedly exalted ends justify whatever means it deems necessary. This may result in members participating in behaviors or activities they would have considered reprehensible or unethical before joining the group. For example, lying to family or friends or collecting money for bogus charities. Can anyone say the Democrat Party? That is a perfect example of what the Democrat Party does. The leadership induces feelings of shame and or guilt in order to influence and or control members. Often, this is done through peer pressure and subtle forms of persuasion. Something comes to mind. What could it be? Something comes to mind. Leadership induces feelings of shame and or guilt in order to influence and or control members. Could it be anti-whiteism? Could it be the anti-whites? Could that be what they all are always doing, shaming and guilting us because we're not thinking exactly like them, because we have a heretical view? Of course, sane people would say that anti-whiteism is the absolute pinnacle of the creation of all cults. The pressure that is exerted by the anti-whites on the rest of the population is the epitome of the things that we are reading here. You can go through and check the entire list. I would not doubt in the least that the anti-whites who work at this organizational entity identifying cults around the world had no problem missing their own behaviors when it comes to anti-whiteism and themselves as anti-whites. Subservience to the leader or group requires members to cut ties with family and friends and to radically alter the group goals, radically alter the personal goals and activities they had before joining the group. So they're required to radically alter the personal goals and activities they had before joining the group. You know, I think it was this past Sunday that we had a young man say, because he has started going free, he has decided to go back to his dream of at university, and I think it was to be a chemist or to go into chemistry. That is a beautiful thing, magnificent thing. So a big attaboy to him for returning to that. And as I said then, keeping in mind that in all things that he does, he is still serving white well-being. Who knows what he might end up doing in his life as in those fields. Let's see. The group is preoccupied with bringing in new members, like Israel, working hand in glove with the Democrat Party and the other rabidly anti-white parties all across Europe, the United States, Canada, everywhere that this organization is working hand in glove with the anti-whites, bringing in new members, a new voting population. So that's another example of a cult. The group is preoccupied with making money. That's too easy. You all can guess what group that is. Let's see. Members are expected to devote inordinate amount of time to the group and group-related activities. Well, that's your average HOA, your average mixed martial arts group, any club really whatsoever. United Slaves. Maybe you should look up the United Slaves as well. That's an interesting group to maybe look up. The United Slaves, interesting group to look them up. Members are encouraged or required to live and or socialize only with other group members. That's funny because that sounds a little bit like a secessionist movement, doesn't it? We'll be talking about secession in a moment. Required to live and or socialize with other group members. The most loyal members feel there can be no life outside the context of the group. Going free, just as an aside, is the exact opposite of that. We ask, and we have been given by Angharad Celtic the response. We ask those of us who are going free to reach out to everyone in their circles of influence to save them with this curative contagion, to help them treat the psychological ailments that they have, the infections in their minds. And so that's what we do here. And we ask that people do this in a way that is safe for the situations that they are in. So in other words, if you are in an environment where if you talk to that coworker, you're going to be terminated like this, well, obviously don't do that. We want you to remain employed. We want you to remain healthy. Another thing as an aside, as I've noted stories of cults over the span of my life, as have all of you, we hear about things like sleep deprivation and other forms of privation, preventing you from eating, emaciating you. We, as an aside, again, as what we do the exact opposite. We want you to be as physically healthy and independent as possible. We want you to go out into the world, to empower yourself, to reach your potentials physically, mentally, and spiritually, and then to put all of that newfound talent and resources to your own well-being. Like when you're on the plane and the mask drops, you're supposed to put the oxygen on yourself first and then help those around you. So we ask then that you do your duty, that you honor your debt that you have to our ancestors, the debt that you have to our biospirit, the responsibility that you have to the generations yet to come, that you then pass that oxygen around to others. So those are some of the key indicative symptoms, with a one that was a supportive symptom of cults. And now I'll take a quick look at what you all are saying, see if there were any questions, and then we're going to jump right into secession and see if I'm missing anything on any of these other platforms. I don't want to do that. So let's see. Johannes is here. Great to see you, my good friend. Greek guy, great to see you. Jonathan is here. Wonderful to see you as well. Angharad Celtic says thank you. Well, thank you. White Awakening is here. Great to see you. Carmica says Freemasonry is a cult. They certainly are fitting a number of these and other markers of cult-like behavior. Ooga says, am I able to... I've never said that your name that fast. It suddenly maybe has the meaning that you wanted it to convey. Are you able to speak to us about the IRL you drove to the other night? Well, I drove back from over the course of the night last night. I'll just say that it was in service to White Wellbeing. We are working on a lot of different things, including building an organizational entity so that we can work for our well-being in a way that can be broadly empowering and not easily undermined. So it is not a process that is a quick fix. There's no band-aid. You could very easily jump into an antiquated form and apply another band-aid, but these antiquated forms have been defeated in the past, and they can be defeated again very easily. I know the ways that they have been defeated. The problem is when you bring something brand new, it's hard for people to envision how it actually plays out in the world. So there's much more persuasion. There's much more proof of concept that has to be put into place. So it was, I was busy doing that. Carmichael asking, have I discussed Freemasonry? I have not. Our primary focus in serving White Wellbeing is breaking the world down into those who serve White Wellbeing and those who choose to be anti-white. We don't make anybody the bad guy. They make themselves our victimizers. But that doesn't mean that we won't at some point maybe touch upon particular organizational entities that have been used for those ends. That's part of the problem when you have such entities, is that their authority, their ability to reach out and extend the power of something behind the scenes, something that could come and usurp control at any point, is a real threat to society. So it's something that we have to keep in mind. Raziel says, would you consider the climate change people as being anti-white, as these advocates are only aiming their rhetoric at white nations and not at the big polluters like Africa and Asia? They become, yes, when they become anti-white, when it harms Western kind and Western civilization. Up until that point, most of them are just, I guess, in many ways, we know there's a lot of pollution going on, but a lot of these claims about anthropogenic global warming are hotly contested. So to put so much faith into something that is so hotly contested, and to put so much faith in it when the leaders, the thinkers of that, the climate doomsdayers, when they have been wrong in their predictions so many times, is to really demonstrate a childlike mentality. I mean, how many times do they have to predict the end of the world before you say, I'm not going to believe these people anymore? But yeah, if they're just sharing, if somebody who has this opinion that the world is going to end in 12 years or 20 years or something of this nature, or the UK will be underwater in 10 years, if they're doing this, but not saying that, well, we need to damage Western civilization, they haven't yet become anti-white. The moment they say that, well, you have to go without a shower, you have to go without an automobile, when countries like China and India are polluting this planet, forget about just carbon footprints, or they are polluting like you cannot even imagine. So to have one word of criticism for what's happening in the West is really to be under the weather, I guess we could say, psychologically. And at that point they have become anti-white. Resurrection Jose asks about what material am I reading from. I'm actually not going to be saying, he says, because speaking in tongues, he believes is a gift of the Holy Spirit. And the reason why is because this particular entity is vehemently anti-white. And I don't want to, one, give them any popularity by mentioning their name, and two, have the anti-whites say, well, what are you trying to bully these people? We're going to yank your channel down. You know, that's the kind of thing they would do. LG says, hope you feel better. Well, thank you so very much for that. Jay Easom writes MLK with exclamation points. JT Smith, thank you very much. That's a very kind comment. Let's see, we just had a super chat. Grand Celestial Night, $5. Jason, no amount of Kool-Aid to stop the curative contagion of white well-being. Here's $5 from a broke college student for our cause. God bless you. Thank you so much for that, ladies and gentlemen. That's the kind of commitment that absolutely deserves a round of applause. A broke college student, somebody who's just getting by. I worked and went to university at the same time. In fact, I had at one point had 2 jobs and a university at the same time. So thank you so very much for that, and for that commitment that you're demonstrating to the service of white well-being. Those $5 are worth far more than to me and to the work we're doing, than a great many, many thousands from somebody like a Mr. Pi. So thank you so very much for that. All right, I think we have everyone over here. I'll check entropy really quick, and we will get on to secession and some words on secession. Heidi says that I received a Ninja Guinea. It's approximately $10 from Wyatt Man, saying nice tie. Thank you so much for the comment and for the super chat over on D Live. And Heidi, thank you for sharing it over here, because I'm even if I look at that screen, I'm as likely to miss it as to see it, I guess I should say. All right. Raziel says, I asked because in Ireland the government wants to roll out a carbon tax on the native Irish people, which to me is anti-white, as if successful, other anti-white governments will try it. Well, precisely. And you know that in all cases, the white population of our countries bears the lion's share of the taxation. And that is why in many of our countries, they have tried to remove the ability, and have successfully removed the ability, for the citizenry to look in to see exactly who is paying the lion's share and who is the recipients. We know what is the case. We know that we as a people, working class whites across our countries, are bearing by far the lion's share of the burden, while all of our new doctors and lawyers and engineers are percentage-wise infinitely more on the recipient side. of that calculation. Lost in Western Society, great name. A good idea would be to make our people more savvy on finance. Falling victims to yet another tribal scheme is just sad. We have 2 to 3 years left before the fiat system collapses. Well, potentially. I mean, keep in mind that there have been people talking about the end of the fiat system, the end of the financial system, and a great many people have made a lot of money off of those fears. And we have talked, regrettably, about the reality of how credulous and just gullible our people are genetically, instinctually. And we have to absolutely take conscious control. And that's what we want you to do. We ask you to do here when you go free, is to take conscious control of your thoughts, consciously observing what you are imbibing from the environment. Because if you're not consciously doing it, and trust me, that is much harder than just sitting there and letting your subconscious take it all in. The subconscious, as we talk about in Go Free, doesn't know the difference between reality and falsehood. Only your conscious mind can say so. So, and we've talked about this, great examples of how you can prove this with anyone in an instant, that this indeed is the case. So if you are not consciously examining these things, if you are not taking ownership of your being, I guess the exact opposite of what they do in a cult, which is they want you to surrender your identity, not assume your identity. They want you to give up and adopt what the cult leader thinks, or the anti-whiteism. They want you to give up who you are and adopt what they think. The Heaven's Gate, Marshall Applewhite, they wanted you to surrender your own thoughts, your own identity, and become just this member of the cult. We do the exact opposite. We want you to take charge of yourself, take charge of your life, take charge of your thoughts, consciously examine what you have been infected with over the course of your life, and then treat yourself for those things. There's no one standing over top of you, demanding that you do these things. You know, another thing they do in place in these cults, so you could think about, oh, what was that? What's that really big one that a couple of movie stars are a member of? Scientology. They have you come in, and this is a regular practice of cults. And by the way, that group may or may not be a cult. You have to look into it for yourself. They might just be wonderful people. Look into it for yourself. But nonetheless, you have to in these environments, you have to go in. You have interviews. You got to reveal all of these sort of secrets and things like this to handlers, and that's all used then to blackmail you later. While you're in the cult. And there's other ones like that hippie cult. I guess, did they move to, what are they called? They moved to India, where this is an anti-white cult. And the thing for them was having sex with children, that the Bible says that you can, of course it does not say that. And many of these victimized people are coming forward. That was one of the things they did, was they would force the new members to have sex with an underage person, so that they had broken the law, and then they would be afraid to ever go against the cult. These are the kind of things that cults do, and and everybody knows these things. And in fact, I'll ask you in a little bit. I'll get some of your thoughts. We're going to get into this secession really quickly. Free Peach is saying, "Did you term the coin or?" Coin the spoonerism is what that's called, ladies and gentlemen, when you flip the words like that. That's what happens when you have no sleep and you drive through the night. But yes, I did coin the term. I neoterized the term white well-being. I actualized I guess we could safely say white well-being was something I coined because that was nowhere, but not necessarily easy for someone to arrive at. Other pieces of verbiage that I began using, back in '94, like I started using Antiwhiteism, which I had seen nowhere. And if you go back, it was not in dictionaries, and anti-white. And if you look elsewhere, it is, I've never found it, which doesn't mean that it's not there. What it does, that somebody didn't use it. And the reason why is because taking what I did was I needed a concept to be able to tell other laborers who really didn't have the time, blue collar laborers that I worked with, who really didn't have the time to deal with all of these different concepts. They just wanted to get right to the point. I needed a concept for them to have a hook that they could hang all of the different thoughts on. So the victimizers, I thought, I'm not going to call them, well, these are the Marxists, these are the social Marxists, those are the first wave feminists, those are third wave feminists, they didn't want to hear any of that garbage. A ton of other names out there. Could go on really for an hour with the names of all the different anti-white groups. So I just said, look, they're anti-white. They're anti-white. And then when I said I needed a concept to say, well, this is what the anti-whites believe in, I just took anti, because everybody knows that's the opposition, the opposed. The word white, a ancillary term for our people. And then ism, meaning a concept or an application, etc. And I just put those together. Now, that is something like train cars that it can be put together. So I don't say that I coined that. Maybe I actualized it. Maybe I started using it where it hadn't been used. But white well-being, that maybe could be defined as a term that I actually neoterized, because not necessarily an easy thing for the average person to stumble upon as linking anti-white and ism together, if that makes sense. Westman, M-A-N and M-E-N, that I coined, never saw that anywhere else. Doesn't mean it didn't happen anywhere else. There are many people out there much smarter than me, much more educated than me. And who knows what people have said and what people have pushed and never been heard. But what I know is that when I experimented with these different tools, is essentially what they are, the words, the dialectics, is that every use was an experiment. I had a great many others, and I won't repeat them because they ended up being foolish and they didn't work. And that I tried over the years, and people would, they would give you the hairy eyeball. What do you mean by that? That just sounds stupid. And so I realized, by way of the experimentation, again, as I say, always putting ahead of me the goal of white well-being, that, I'm going to discard that because it doesn't work. People don't know what it means. It sounds stupid after reflection, whatever. I even conducted experiments with different types of leaflets in towns in Virginia. I would go to different towns and I would see the response with different types of leaflets. So a lot of experimentation over the years to arrive at things that are successful that we have today, and the experimentation continues. And I get now, it's not just what I get from myself, what I can find in books, what I can find in all of my contacts in the white positive sphere, as broad as it can be. But now all of you now inform. And so this will only get sharper. This will only get brighter. We will only get stronger from this interaction. And the fact that we don't regionalize it. We don't say that this is, well, it's just a Virginia thing, or it's just a Southern thing, or it's just an America thing, or it's just a Northern Hemisphere thing, or whatever. We reach out to the entirety of the white world. That means we're going to be able to source genius from the entirety of our people. And that is extremely important. If some brilliant person in, I don't know, Switzerland does not see him or herself as a participant in the good work that we are doing for white well-being, well, then the brilliant ideas that person might have for white well-being will probably not be communicated to us. But if that person realizes that we wrap our arms around that person as quickly as I would somebody who lives, like Jeff from White Art Collective lives somewhere in DC, Northern Virginia, near me, as quickly as I would wrap my arms around him, I would wrap my arms around that person. That person is then going to decide, well, I'm going to put my intellectual weight behind this as well. I'm going to put my shoulder into this, and we will only get brighter. This is why the anti-whites dislike, hate, loathe this international idea of embracing all of our people, a single people with many countries around the world, more so than they do nationalism or regionalism, which really is a shortcoming. It's just another sectarian approach which has failed in the past, and we cannot allow to fail us in the future. We have to learn from our mistakes. And there will be people out there that are, because of prejudices, because of stupidity, because of, and by stupidity, I just mean not the education, people out there with just low intelligence. They just can't compute very well, that will object, and they won't want to participate, and they'll disparage, and we will just invite them to leave. And that's all there is to it. They can remain in fact, there are a lot of people, and know this, ladies and gentlemen, that you're going to see this, that there are a lot of people who are only comfortable losing because they have always lost. And so when they hear something, and you will see it in their eyes, if you haven't seen it before, you will end up seeing it, as I have seen it many times. When you take somebody who has lost again and again and again with different ideas in the service to our people, and then you provide them with something that you see it in their eyes when they say, oh my God, that really has a chance, then suddenly it goes from that really has a chance to this nervousness of, wait, that's territory I've never been before. I've never been in a successful position before. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. You see that in all aspects of human life. Some of our greatest thinkers have talked about over the millennia, have talked about people who are actually afraid of success, and that's why they never become a success, because they would rather wallow in the loss that they know, in the misery that they know, because that's comfortable, than go into the uncharted territory of victory. And again, if we come across people like that, we just need to, they won't move on with us. We can politely ask them to leave until they have fixed themselves and are ready to come back. This is a movement of redemption. We all have, this isn't like they were talking about the cults. It's elitist. And that's not what we have going on here. We have people with real lives who have made real mistakes, and they're coming forward and cleaning themselves up and making themselves better, making all of us better as a result of it. So let us see if there's anything else here, and then I'm going to get on to secession. We don't want to get stuck in one place too long. I've got to get this Go Free up in digital form so that you all can get it all around the world on Kindle, which makes it infinitely easier. Looks like we have a super chat from Snow Duchess over here on Cash App. Thank you, my dear lady. Always a great participant. Always beautiful to see you. $20. She super chats to protect our white babies. Thank you. And writing, nice, crispy shirt. Thank you. Yes, it is. Thank you for that. I believe it or not, I do my own ironing, because who the hell else is going to do it? So I iron. I really can't. Wrinkles can vex me. I mean, I'm not like overly can't function if there are wrinkles, but if something is wrinkled, then I feel the need to fix it. You don't have to be rich. You just have to try. You just have to have a heart. You just got to put your best foot forward. That's how you deter. That's how I determine over the years who to hire and who to get rid of and who not to hire. The person who comes in, they don't necessarily have to be the person with the absolute best qualifications. If a person came in and I could tell that the person with the best qualifications really couldn't care less about the job, and the person with the next down is really energetic and wants to put their best foot forward every single day, wants to succeed, that's the person you want. That's why I liked Jared George from the beginning, because I could, Jared's not rich. Jared doesn't have all of the skills when he got started to make videos, doesn't have the best video camera, doesn't have all the perfect everything, just like me, just like all of you who are doing the right thing. But he said, I'm moving forward, just like we did with the afterparty.tv, in which if you haven't gone over to that after the stream, please do, and sign up for the newsletter so that you can get important information. So let's move on. I'll get into this secession. Then I'll take another look at your comments, and then we will get to the conclusion of this stream and wrap it up a little bit more quickly than normal. I'm, of course, going to be back on Sunday for a proper Going Free stream, but I will be back tonight streaming on these platforms with Jared George, just aforementioned, and Semigog. And we're going to be streaming an after hours. Excuse me. We're going to be streaming an after hours and talking about tips for groypers. So if you have some groyper friends out there, you might want to ask them to watch. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen. So, thoughts on secession. Here it goes. Is everybody ready? We're going to make this. This is going to be easy. Some people think this is hard. We're going to make it real easy. George Mountain, super chatting $10. Thank you so much. Great name. Writing $10 isn't enough for the great work you do for all of us. Well, bless you. That's most kind of you. Thank you for those good words. All you cheap, particular group of people in the chat, grow a pair and give this man some cash. Stay safe, brother. I will stay safe. And I deeply appreciate your kind words, and your $10 for the cause of White Wellbeing means a great deal. And thank you so much for that. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a great participant, and also for trying to stir some participation. You all can participate, as I say, in any way that you are able to participate. You don't have to. It doesn't have to have anything. Again, nothing like we were just talking about the cult. It doesn't have to have anything to do with me. Just serve White Wellbeing. Do it in the way that is effective. Do it in the way that is working for our people. There are a great many wonderful folks who are creating content. You can support, of course, the great Poseidon, as many of you do. The great content that he produces every Saturday, a great party. Jeff of White Art Collective, all of these, for Null and Luke Mason and Snow Shadow, so many magnificent people. Jared George, of course, and for all of you over in the UK as well, Mark Collette, of course. So many magnificent people doing good things in the vein of serving White Wellbeing. That's what's important. You don't want to support other avenues that are pursuing objectives that have proven themselves to be detrimental to White Wellbeing. That is the big difference. So that, I hope, is lucid enough that everyone can make their own conclusion and figure out, okay, I like this content creator. They're producing something that is serving White Wellbeing, and so therefore I'm going to support the work they're doing, as opposed to something obvious, like some group who has donned all of the attire and catchphrases of the antagonists in the anti-white narrative in their book. If somebody looks like that, that is harming our pursuit of White Wellbeing. So that would be something that you would not want to support. So here we are on Secession. Thank you again, Mr. Mountain. It's a great last name. This is really simple when it comes to secession. You want to know about whether or not there should be a discussion about secession or a consideration about secession. There are, first of all, when I look at something like this, I'm going to get a little animated. I'm going to try not to get a little animated, but it is difficult, I have to say, when you all will know, you all are intelligent people. We obviously are drawing, as I always said, I draw the best to me and I repel the worst. The people that end up being really dreadful, they flee from me in a hurry. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I demand honorability. I demand that you behave like an honorable member of Western kind, man or woman. Dishonorable people don't like that. I acknowledge that we will fail as human beings, that we're fallible. And so I say that when you fail, the only thing that is appropriate is to get back up, dust yourself off, and keep heading in the right direction. There are other people out there who like to moralize all day long about being a stand-up person, an ethical person, and they will condemn anybody that stumbles and say, off with their heads. You know, these, what's the word? It'll come back to me in a minute. There's a very specific word about folks that do that. You won't know it anyhow. It's too rare. But and I'm not. Those kind of people don't like me either, because they'll say, "What do you mean you're going to forgive somebody who stumbles and who wants to redeem themselves? Why would you allow somebody to serve White Wellbeing? Why wouldn't you condemn them if they had married a non-white person before finding out about white well-being, if they had had mixed race children before finding out about white well-being, if they had participated in making pornographic movies before finding out about white well-being, if they had used drugs before finding out about white well-being. And I understand that there are people out there who use things like marijuana, or they think it, and they believe it to be quite safe, and that's their thing. And in our world, when we recapture our destiny, there's going to be a place for you, of course. You'll be able to use these substances. You won't be able to lean on me for your hospital bills and all of this sort of business. But it'll be on you. But I'm talking about heavier things, heroin and all of this. People who are really destroying themselves quite rapidly with illicit drugs. Why would you allow those people to serve white well-being? Well, because we are a movement of redemption, because we recognize that people are fallible. This is the species that we are. We're going to accept that people have stumbled, and what matters is the direction they're going. Now, if you have a history of stumbling, getting up, and then stumbling again, getting up, and then some, then you have proven yourself to be a recidivist, and we can't have you in our midst. But it's just like the difference between a deserving poor and the undeserving poor. Deserving poor are the folks that we should give charity to, that we did give charity to before there was a welfare state. People who, through no action of their own, through a rational average person's perception of the world and endeavor to be independent, they somehow by chance end up, aleatory scenario, they end up destitute. Those people we have always helped, and we should help. Undeserving poor are the kind of people who make the decision, or the decisions that land them in poverty. And if you give charity to those people, you feed and grow that phenomenon. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? So if, for example, there are women who are making the decision to have children out of wedlock, and then they go to the government and they say, use your guns to force all of the white men out there to pay for my baby that I had out of wedlock, that is something that can't be permissible when we recapture our destiny, because that is something that we have wildly grown. That is a cancer we have wildly grown, because it's I don't know if it's true. I used to hear in the past that if somebody had cancer and you cut them open and the air touched the cancer, it grew. It would increase the rate of growth exponentially. If this is false, please tell me and tag me so I know not to repeat it. If it's true, tell me, tag me, and then I will repeat it. But it's sort of the same thing. We have exacerbated something that is going to happen in society. This is going to happen occasionally here and there, but we've made an entire class of people now by feeding that monster. So we can't do it. So here's back to secession. Here's the easy answer to secession, is that you can talk about, well, before I was going to say that, this is the point I wanted to make about us being intelligent. When you hear a suggestion made about a remedy to something, the more intelligent you are, the more steps you can see into the future that have to be hurdles that have to be crossed to get to that thing. The less intelligent you are, the fewer hurdles you can see between you and that objective. Does that make sense? The more intelligent you are, the more steps you'll see. And here I'm talking about G, the computing power of the brain. The more steps you can see, the greater the computing power. And not only that, but the interplay of dynamic forces in the crossing of those hurdles into the future. And so the further something is out, the grander the remedy, the more impossible it actually is to achieve. So if we were to say force field instead of secession, our problem is force field. Well, it's easier to see, I think, that way than it is to say secession for most people. To see, well, force field, that'd be a whole lot of science that would have to be invented to develop a force field through which air can pass, sunshine can pass, clouds can pass so that it can rain, but somehow it magically keeps out the elements we don't want into the force field. So saying secession as a response to our condition is the exact same thing as saying force field. It is a very unclear, a very unclear approach. I'm going to be as polite as possible. It is a very unclear approach. I understand where this desire comes from. This feeling of desperation, this feeling of hopelessness. I know where that comes from. That is a dark pit I've seen in too many of our people's hearts. This absolute misery. And in those, and I'll share with you something that is actually quite important about this right now, and then I'll say the question you have to have an answer for secession before you can even begin to contemplate all of the thousands of hurdles that have to be crossed into the future to make it happen, and the dynamism at play with those hurdles. Both, if you wanted to try to put it into, I'll tell you the way it kind of plays out in my mind when I see this. If I were to try to explain it to you all, it's kind of, if we're going to say there are hurdles, numerous hurdles into the future, all of these other thoughts come in. I have all of these things have to be done. This has to be done, then that, then this, then that, all the way out into that answer. But then at the same time, when I think of these instantly, when I think of, okay, this hurdle has to be crossed, I think about the dynamism that can move the hurdle like this and can move the hurdle like this, can ultimately change the challenge at that moment. So you then realize that it becomes impossible. As likely, let me rephrase it like this, as likely as force field. It is as likely as force field. So let's find a physicist and we will ask how close we are to a force field, and then we'll get a response. I assure you, the physicist's eyes will go wide and they'll, my God, you have no idea how many things we have to do. But this is something that I want to mention to all of you. This is very important because this will affect all of your lives, all aspects of your life. But it's most important here because we're serving white well-being. And that's this. This is something that I just said to myself many years ago because I determined that this indeed was the case. I use it in my life regularly. It has served me well. It has served others that I have told of it well. Never wish for anything. Don't wish upon a star. Never wish for a thing unless it's just the simplest, like childish type of statement. It's just a throwaway statement, and there's actually no meaning to it. That's one thing. But if you wish for something, here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, a wish is actually a curse. The moment you wish for something, you have cursed yourself to never have it. Does that make sense? The moment you wish, you have just cursed yourself to never have the thing that you wished for. And don't bother saying, I wished for a new job and then I ended up having a new job. Those are called exceptions to the rule. What happens here is a function of your brain. The moment you wish for something, you have turned over your responsibility, your personal responsibility, to chance. And chance doesn't know you. Chance doesn't care about you. Chance isn't a kid on the football team. Chance is a phenomenon in human interaction, in life, that may or may not land on you in a way that is preferable or desirable. And in most cases, it does not. So the moment you wish, if you wish for that raise, you're not going to get it because you have turned over the responsibility of getting that raise to chance rather than putting it on you, taking the responsibility to do the things that are going to get you that raise. Does that make sense? So don't do that when it comes to the service to white well-being. Don't wish from that pit of despair and misery of all of this infliction of these infections on us, that you wish we could secede. You wish X, Y, or Z. Don't you ever wish. The moment you start wishing, you better stop yourself and begin saying, what can I do to serve white well-being and bring about that day when we recapture our destiny? And then we can argue over stupid things like, what county or what state are you going to be able to smoke marijuana in. All right. So that is extremely important. And if you all make sure you do this, if you implement this in your life, you're the student right now, like the honorable student who just gave us $5, or the one who's going to go back to school. I think it was for chemistry. If you implement this, you say to yourself, for example, I wish I had an A in this course, or I wish, and that used to be something that you would say, and you decide to get rid of that curse and make it happen, come back to us. Let us know. I promise, if you are like all of these other people that I have shared this with, and God, I wish I had been shared, that had been shared with me when I was a child. I had to figure all these things out when I became an adult. Once so much time had already gone by, what could I be doing now for our people if these sorts of things had been shared with me instead of me having to figure them out? So I'm sharing them with you. Share them with your children. You might have the next daughter or son who's going to have a 120, 130, 150 IQ, or how about this, 100 IQ, but just amazingly industrious, heart as big as a Volvo, and is going to make things happen no matter what his or her innate capabilities. That's what's important. You tell them that, you unleash them now, you protect them from the mean pathogens, and you watch what happens for the well-being of our people. So here's the thing that you have to understand about secession. The moment you can defeat the United States government at war, you can secede. Period. No other questions. No other buts. Shut up if you have a but. The moment you can defeat the United States government and every other government that is dominated by the anti-white elites, which means all of the governments of the West and virtually all of the other governments of the world, the moment you can defeat them all at warfare, then you can begin to plot secession. There is no use in thinking about seceding because no anti-white anywhere is going to prevent or is going to permit a group of white people to say in argument, let us just cleave off this little bit here. So it's going to have to be hostile, which means it's going to have to be warfare. So you are going to have to be able to defeat. If you cannot tell me how you're going to defeat the United States, Great Britain, Germany, France, Canada, Mexico, any country that the anti-white elites could bring to bear against you, if you can't tell me how you're going to defeat them in warfare, then shut up and go home. This is a dumb argument, and it's been made by, well, let me just say, it's not a lucid argument. It's not a rational argument. It is an irrational argument. It is an irrational position. Let me see here what a couple of the points I wanted to make. I jotted some quick notes down, but really that's the end of discussion. The discussion is extremely wistful in its nature. For example, citing bad demographic numbers citing bad demographic numbers is a supportive point for one's wish that we could secede. It is not a supportive point for the possibility or applicability or even appropriateness of secession. Okay, does that make sense? You can't say demographics are bad, so therefore that's a point for the applicability or the achievability of secession. No, it is a point that supports your wish that we could secede, but is not a point that we could secede or even that it would be appropriate. How appropriate would it be? Even if by some quirk of magic, we could cleave off some area and somehow magically we could defend it with arms against the United States government. How smart would that be to cleave off some corner here or there when they would just radiate the totality of the landmass? Even if you could somehow in basic warfare with tanks and jets and machine guns and mortars and RPGs or laws in America, all of these weapons, Humvees, M1, A2, Apache helicopters, if you had all of this and somehow you could bring the United States and all of the rest of the military of the world to a standstill and occupy some corner of land, they would just press a button and we all would be gone. That is what would happen. Now, there have been intelligent people, very intelligent, educated people like Dr. Hill, who have talked about secession for a long time. You take the group of people in the South, in the Southland. I'm a proud Southerner from Virginia. You take a group of people who identifies as a group of people who has a shared history, a shared persecution, even. In those environments, educated and intelligent people like Dr. Hill were talking about secession as a move on the chessboard for conversation purposes, for argumentative purposes. Yes, if he could have his druthers, he would have secession, he would have the South secede again. But ultimately, when intelligent, educated people like Dr. Hill, and whether or not, in those halcyon days of being out front and leading the marches he led and the arguments and the conferences he had, when he talked about secession, he was moving a chess piece. It was a gambit on the board that said, I'm talking about secession, and here's the reason why. And then there's a list. So it was an argumentative tactic, because we have different peoples, because we want different outcomes, because these lives are being ruined by X, Y, or Z. Does that make sense? So there wasn't an insane idea that you could somehow talk anti-whites out of what they already possess and have them give it over to people who are heretics, have them turn it over to heretics. And there was no insane belief that you could fight it away from them, that you were somehow going to wage war on the United States. So that was what was going on with intelligent people, educated people like Dr. Hill when they talked about secession. Yes, if he had his druthers, it would be secession. But in reality, what do we have here in this context for the day? You have an argumentative gambit that opens the door to talk about a bunch of other things when you are talking with prospective converts to that line of thinking, when you are talking to anti-white reporters and the like. Now, we can talk about actual secession, can't we? Because there was a secession in the United States. And how did it happen? Well, it happened because you had a unified people in the Southland who saw themselves, an entire people who saw themselves as distinct from the rest of the country. Very distinct. They saw themselves as, look, we are Southerners. We do things a certain way. We are very different from our brothers in the North when they were still all together in the United States, still joined in that union, which was supposed to be a union of choice that they could leave, that they still saw themselves as very different people. And more importantly, they identified themselves as white, as a people, as white people with a specific, identifiable, distinct, discrete culture with distinct governments for their countries that were called states. Each one of those states was its own country. Just like we call the state of Iraq or the state, those were all their own countries. And the citizenry of those states were loyal to the governments of authoritative bodies for those people. Remember the importance of authority to white people. Those were the authoritative bodies. Now, we can't go into why they seceded. Maybe we could do that on D Live sometime, but we can't do it here on YouTube. But they end up seceding. They seceded with their loyalty to white people, our distinct culture as Southerners, and specifically to the authority of their governments of their country, which were their states. And then those individual countries, those individual states became a union in the Confederate States of America, just like they had in the United States of America. That was a giant landmass composed of a unified people who had the absolute conviction of righteousness and faith and loyalty in authoritative bodies, not a deracinated mass of white people who, the most of whom are terrorized of being or saying anything heretical, who believe deep down that they're demonic and immoral for caring about our white children, for stopping the harm that's being inflicted on our white babies. We have a sick population around the world now that has to be healed. Not a group of people that we can convince this is the legitimate authorities, and you should go with us into this idea of secession. And what happened? They were not able to defeat the United States at war. That's what happened. What happened, ladies and gentlemen? I have some numbers I jotted down. Let me tell you, when the United States government was composed of white people with some anti-white influence, but nothing like today, when it was composed of people who had cousins and uncles and brothers or sisters who lived in the South. What about Abe Lincoln's wife and her family and where they were from and who they were loyal to? These were people who, running this government, who were our very own kind. And we can look to examples out this throughout history. They were willing to murder to prevent secession. They were willing to murder roughly 700,000 combatants. 700,000. When you include the deaths of civilians, we're talking about over 1 million people they were willing to exterminate to prevent secession. It gets worse. The country had roughly 30 million people at that time. Well, let me say the country. The United States and the Confederate States together had roughly 30 million people. And they were willing to murder 1 million of them to prevent secession. That was legal. It was legal to withdraw from that union. The documents, the ink was still wet. It was so legal to withdraw. And they were still willing to murder 1 million plus people to prevent secession. So there were roughly 30 million then. There are roughly 300 million, a little over 300 million now. If we were to balance the numbers out, that would be roughly around 12 million that they would be willing to murder to prevent secession. And that would be if the government was controlled by our brothers, fellow white people who had feelings for us, who had relatives living amongst us. You have something very different running the show in the federal governments of the West now. How many more? I don't think there would be any number that they wouldn't be willing to murder to prevent from losing power. 12 million, 50 million, 100 million, they'd be willing to murder to prevent from losing control. And you're going to talk about, some folks are going to talk about secession, a very short-sighted, very myopic. But here's what I'm going to do. For anybody out there who wants to advance the idea of secession, I'm going to put the burden on you where it belongs, not on people like me. The burden belongs on you. For those who want to advance secession, the burden belongs on you. You have to demonstrate proof of concept. One of the first things that you're going to have to do
if you want to be able to succeed, is move masses of people to a particular area. So let you prove your concept with moving, say, 50,000. You're going to need a great many dozens of millions to be able to wage this war. We're not even getting into the whole, how do you get the armaments? How do you get all, you're going to need a great many millions. So let's see you move 50,000 to a particular area and give us proof of concept. You know what I bet? I bet you're not going to be able to move 50,000. I bet you're not even going to be able to move 50 people to a new area. The burden is on you. You won't have proof of concept if you get 50 people to move to a specific town somewhere or a specific county somewhere, but you will have at least been moving in some sort of direction other than just complaining. So let's see you move at least 50 to a new area. Here's the problem when it comes to moving folks to an area, ladies and gentlemen. Just picking up stakes and moving. We now live in an extraordinarily specialized society where we are hyper specialized and educated and trained on a specific thing, the vast majority of us. And we are basically imbecilic when it comes to everything else because the human animal can only hold so much in its head. So people live where they live because they live where they work. And not everyone, not every line of work out there is a line of work that a person can say, well, I could just pick it up and do it anywhere. In the past, when everybody was a farmer or everybody did X, Y, or Z that was on the land and you could do that anywhere you went or something analogous, it would be much easier. Like the Mormons picked up a bunch of people and they just moved on. You couldn't do that today with the same numbers, with the same momentum, with the same outcome. And for anybody out there who might object, what about the folks who work online? First of all, that jobs that are done just online, tiny percentage of overall jobs out there. So you've radically reduced the number of people who can participate. And then you're going to move out to some small town, and what's going to happen there? They're just going to shut off the internet to the town. They're going to disrupt it. It could be anything from some balaclava wearing scumbags going out and hacking through the cables somewhere, all the way up to cable companies deciding that since you're heretical, they're not going to provide service to that area anymore. So the burden is on you. If you think that you could effectuate secession somewhere, let's see you just get 50 people to move someplace. And if you can't, shut up. So I'm going to take a look at the questions and comments that have been made, and then I'm going to get to my final statements and why we decided to have this conversation here after PWR, despite driving through the night and everything else I've been doing. I want to make sure we get everybody's questions and comments, make sure that any misunderstandings or confusion is resolved. Let me ask, has anybody attempted to super chat by way of the familiar alternative? I will just ask that. I'll go from the bottom up. Bigot Smalls, what if we move back to Europe? You're black pilling. No, I'm absolutely. It's only black pilling if you have a delusion that is the route to success. That is not the route to success. Does that make sense? If the house is on fire and you say that, well, let's put it out with these squirt guns we have. And I say, oh, that's not going to work. You're never going to put all this fire out with your squirt gun. And you then say to me, well, this is black pilling. We can't put this fire out. No, it's because you're focused on the squirt gun. There are ways to put this fire out. But if you focus on the squirt gun, then there isn't going to be any success. So there is a route, and we talk about it here all of the time, and we're doing it right now. In fact, we are treating the infections that we all have with this curative contagion that is spreading, as you all can see, like wildfire. What we have to do today, ladies and gentlemen, and some of you have heard this before, some of you may be hearing it for the first time. If it's live and you're hearing it for the first time, you don't quite get it, chime in. If it is in replay, please feel free to ask in the thread. But what we are doing with this curative contagion is we have to shift the context of where we are today to a new context. Now, that can take longer or that can be shorter. It depends on us, how hard we work. It depends also on some things going on outside of us and how we react and respond to those things. Rest assured, we have the intelligence now to make the best decisions irrespective of what's going on outside of us. But we have to be working hard as hell right now to spread this curative contagion. Because by spreading this curative contagion, giving people the right way to think about themselves, our identity, understand the anti-white world, we will shift the context from where it is today to where it can be. And in a new context, which we can't predict what that will look like. No human being can, no computer can. You cannot model human ingenuity. In that new context, there will be new opportunities. And in that new context, those opportunities might open up a path to us that is quite rapid and totally invisible to us today. So if anything, you should be absolutely ecstatic that there is an opportunity to move where we are to someplace new, where there might be a door that takes us to our destiny and in the time scale of things overnight. Now, we might get to that next context, and there'll be opportunities that will enable us to go a little further, take us to a new context where new opportunities will be presented to us. Fewer and worse things, fewer opportunities presented to the anti-whites in those contexts. Perhaps in those contexts, anti-whites begin making enormous errors in strategy, which would then change things again. The problem is that, and I've talked about this before, when it comes to examining the playing field here, is that if you look at the playing field, if you look at the way things are, and you say, this is how things are for all time, any strategy that you come up in that, on that playing field, in that context, is doomed to failure. Because nothing stays static. Nothing is going to stay the same. In the course of your life, it may seem like things change very little, but it might be because there are not people like us who are shifting the context to something brand new. So we work with the context that we have with the intent of moving it to a new place where we will have opportunities invisible to us today. That should be extremely white pilling, because that, my friends, is a hell of a lot easier than fighting off the United States government. Because let me tell you something, you're never going to get to the point where you get to fight a war against the United States government. You know, I was talking about all of these hurdles along the way, the many thousands of hurdles that you would have to cross between. This is what's blackpilling. Who was it? Bigot Smalls that asked this. This is what's blackpilling. When you say, I have this wish for secession, and then I look out over the distance between here and there, and I see thousands of hurdles I have to cross, all of which are in perpetual motion, as everything is dynamic in human interaction, dynamic in the environment itself, could change things radically and have a contextual change that would give us new opportunities. You just don't know. But here's the thing, you would never get over all of those hurdles, even if you could somehow, which is not possible. But even if we just theorized that it's done for argument's sake, you still couldn't get there, because you know it's going to be done in the United States, and they're going to be applicable or similar laws in other Western countries. You are immediately going to be charged with sedition. You're going to be tried in a private court. No one's going to even get to know that you're being tried. If you're allowed to have an attorney, and they've already done this in the United States, if you are allowed to have an attorney, the attorney is not allowed to defend you. The attorney is only allowed to observe, and then you're going to go to jail forever, and no one will see you again. So if you got not 50,000, but say you got 500 people to move to an area with the open intent to secede, they're not going to, the government of the United States is not going to allow that to get any bigger. I can guarantee that. They're going to come in there and they're going to Ruby Ridge your ass. They're going to Waco your ass. And those who don't fight back and get murdered by the anti-whites are going to be tried with sedition, and no one will ever see you again. It might not even get to that point with as fanatical as the anti-whites are now. If you are openly talking about secession, you are going to go to jail for life. So what do I say? What are we offering here? Well, I just said we have to treat the psychology of our injuries, which is the anti-white infection. We have to spread that treatment, that curative contagion, to our brothers and sisters. By spreading it as rapidly as we can, and it spreads very easily, we present a force to help push against the context, to push it in a new direction. There are going to be other factors playing in there as well, ladies and gentlemen. And we will take advantage of those opportunities when they're presented to us. Yes, where you can move to an environment where you can be close with others who are going free, rear your children in going free, do that sort of thing. Be normal white families like all of the other white families around you, because you want the whole community to eventually join in, the whole subdivision to eventually start going free. Be normal like them, have a regular job, rear your children in service to white well-being, dress what is normal for your economic status, for the job that you do that is normal for your community. Share this truth and this blessing and this hope with them. And don't be in one place so that you can be Ruby Ridged out of existence or Waco'd out of existence. Be everywhere. Have those little towns, have those little communities everywhere. Obviously, not in the intercities where it is rabidly anti-white and in many cases anti-white and non-white. But it really doesn't matter, because if they're white anti-whites, they're still going to come after you. Maybe even worse. Get your family into someplace safe where you can work, you can live, you can rear them in love and blessing and hope for our people. Put your shoulder behind this curative contagion, and let's move this context. We only have a certain amount of time before we reach that event horizon. And it might even come quicker than we think. But we know that event horizon is approaching, which we've talked about. That is where the anti-whites begin to look at of the various groups that compose anti-whiteism, begin to look at each other as the real competitor for their well-being and individual well-being and enrichment, rather than us. That is our window for opportunity. We better be there, and you better be working your ass off along with me and everybody else who has been dedicating themselves to this, to make sure that we are ready when that time comes, to make sure that we have a united people, that we can act as a group, that we can present ourselves to the totality of our race as an authority to them, which they need to be able to follow. If there isn't that authority structure, they're not going to heed anything we say. That's what we need to be doing now. And once we get to that place, as I said, everybody's going to say then, well, obviously that was the way to go. No shit. But now we have everybody who wants to just say, not sure if that may, nobody's done that before. I know nobody has done it before. They've never been in a situation like this before. This is what we have to do. It works. Other secessionist movements have failed. Other movements, like we'll talk about tonight, like this, the Groypers, where some of them are wanting it to be a Catholic thing, have failed. We cannot break ourselves up into sects. And we cannot pursue an objective that has already demonstrated to rivers of seas and oceans of blood, ideas that have failed. So let me see. So Bigot Smalls, brother, you should feel absolutely ecstatic that we have this opportunity, that we have time. Because I'm going to tell you what, there can be natural disasters, there can be calamities, there can be a lot of things that could radically change the context, and we better be ready. No one, let me tell you what, no nationalist group that exists now is going to suddenly be white positive tomorrow if, who knows what happens, an asteroid hits, or who knows what kind of calamity could happen. A solar flare that disrupts the magnetic sphere, the geomagnetic sphere around the world, and throws everything into haywire. You better believe that those nationalist groups, especially here in the U.S., are going to show up. If they're going to rebel, they're going to show up with their multiracial crew sitting on top of the tank, saying it's all about the ideas. So we better get to them quick. You better start spreading this curative contagion, because the opportunities are coming, and we have to be ready to take advantage. That is what's white pilling. You now have something you can actually do. You can now get off your ass, or stay on your ass and type all day long to people on the internet about this curative contagion, or get out and pass out leaflets, get out and fund content creators, get out and put your intelligence behind what we are doing. There are things we can do to build up where we need to be so that we are ready when the moment hits, because the moment is coming one way or another. And we are either going to be able to take advantage of that opportunity or not. I'll tell you this, and then we'll get to the rest of the comments. I had a belief that helped to, I had a lot of natural talent as an athlete. I was extremely fast. I was very strong for my size. I had a very extremely high vertical leap. But the thing that made me a star athlete, which is no brag, just fact, the thing that made me a star athlete was that I was haunted by the reality that somewhere out there in the future, there was going to be a moment where I was going to come up against some other guy who is also training to be the best athlete he can be. And there's going to be a moment when the window is open for me and I'm going to be in competition with him. Am I going to be the one who has worked the hardest for that day? Because if I'm not, he's going to beat me that day, whoever he is. And I faced him again and again and again in baseball and football primarily, basketball more when I was a youth, but in baseball and football primarily. And again, I won. Because when I thought about him out there working, is he out running in the rain? Is he running the next 100 meters and puking all over himself? Is he going to climb another set of bleachers? Is he? Because if he is, I've got to do one more. I've got to do one more set. I've got to try a little bit harder. And because of that, I won. Because of that mentality, we are going to win. The anti-whites are out there training right now. They've got their money. They've got their goons. They've got their plans. We have to be training as well. You better do one more. You better be willing to do one more set of bleachers. You better be willing to do one more 100-meter dash. Because if you're not, when that moment comes, and it's coming, we're going to lose our ass. And there's no wish in the world that's going to save it. Thank you for your question. Dale Jones, super chatted $2. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Super chatting to the cause of white well-being. All right, let me see. I will refresh these, make sure I didn't miss anything. And I will, looks like we have Zero Talon over on Cash App. And it is refreshing right now. That's refreshing. It is refreshing to receive a super chat from Zero Talon. Thank you very much, my dear friend. Looks like we have a $2 super chat asking, what is hairy eye? Well, that's when you squint and you have the hairs are close together, I think. If I'm wrong, please, somebody correct me. Zero Talon also, $2, another $2. Thank you, my dear friend. And writing this time, writing about the sex cult Nexium. Indeed, started by a particular group of folks. Thank you very much for that kind super chat, my good friend, and bringing that to our attention. Let me see. Heidi says, when you can check Tippy. Am I able to receive them right now? Over on Tippy, I will check. on Tippy, €5, my good friend. I don't see that there, if there was a way for you to write, I don't see that verbiage. So I apologize for that. You can add it and tag me in the chat, and I will read whatever you wrote. But here I see the €5. Thank you very much for that kind investment to the cause of white well-being, my dear friend. Thank you, Heidi, for bringing my attention to that. Let's see what else we have. If anybody else has tagged me over here on Apollo says, exactly, well said, going free, great name. Says, how should we use the Holodomor Remembrance Day to set people going free? Well, it depends. In most cases, you are not going to be confronted with someone who's going to even be able to remotely understand. So you don't, what took place there, why that has been hidden from them. So you don't want to make it complicated. You want to use it as a touch piece, I guess, in the process of explaining going free. You can say, this is where our people were exterminated. Did you ever hear about that? No, never heard about that. Well, the reason why you didn't hear about it, and then you go into how the system is anti-white, rather than say, let me educate you on the history of X, Y, or Z, because you will watch their eyes glaze over and they won't hear another word, and you won't be bringing them any closer to going free. Does that make sense? People don't want to hear these long histories about X, Y, or Z. They can't absorb them. They don't want, and if they do get to a point where they want to know about those historical events, they will ask you, and they will go look for themselves. So be available if they want to ask and they want to know more. But otherwise, you just want to touch upon such a thing and get right back to, look, this is the reason why it hasn't been mentioned, because anti-whites don't care about mass white murder, white erasure. They're not talking about these. Look at this. You can use many historical events. The problem that a lot of people have is, and this is the old model, and I used to believe, because I believed our elders and all of the old methods when I came into the white positive sphere, was you had to be educated on every event in all of history, and you had to be ready to recite, and all of it for your audience. I did all of that. I would go on and on and on, and I would watch the people's eyes glaze over, and just, they didn't want to hear another word, and they hadn't been persuaded at all. It was a very rare person who gave a damn to hear any more. That is simply not the way to go. I have proven it to be faulty. You will be able to reach a very tiny number of people, but we don't have time for that. Let people who want to, it's like higher education. Let people who want to investigate these things, investigate them. Let's get to them with the things that make them identify the biospirit, that we are a single people with many countries, that they are being harmed individually because we are being harmed collectively. Those are the kind of things that we have to communicate. Those are the easy kind of things to demonstrate. That's why the curative contagion moves so quickly through the people it touches. So thank you for that question. Snow Duchess says, yes, no white guilt agrees. Stop wishing. Amen. Thank you very much, dear lady. All right. If anybody else has asked any questions, let me see if I've missed them. Ray was testing. What about the Heidi? What I was asking about was the familiar alternative, not Tippy, the one I never give a name to. But if you all are going to, if one of you are going to super chat there, please make it the lowest they will let you. I just am curious for an experiment, and then detract that sum from your next super chat, please. These are wonderful people, ladies and gentlemen. Heidi and Ray, just magnificent participants in the cause. They have a big family. They're working class folks. They are doing this. They are participating. They are contributing their time, their intelligence, their love, and their dollars, doing without, because they know that all of this is for those babies at their knees. They know that all of this is for the tomorrow. They're going to be able to, unless something radically changes, white people will be able to white flight from, like a zigzag line across the map, from one spot to the next, trying to hide the global map from white erasure, from personal harm, many of them, not all. But only cowards are going to do that. Heroes like these people, and they will absolutely be remembered, their names in our Hall of Heroes. So thank you both. Bless you both for all the hard work that you do. Seaver is here. Seaver says the familiar alternative is not working. Many are reporting. And also, where can we buy the Go Free cards? The Go Free cards. Oh, the ones that I sent, that I'm sending out with the books. Well, technically, they're not for sale yet, but I can make them for sale if people would like those. And you can go and you can pass those out at everywhere you go. Family members, put them in books, doctors' offices, people on the street. Obviously, don't give it to somebody who is you think will be offended and feel afraid from handing them such a card. Give them to people that you think have an opportunity to go free. Jay Lee writes, Jason is on fire tonight. No White Guilt, keep up the great work. Glad to be here supporting you, our tribe, and the future. Well, thank you so much. Justin writes, you're either with us or you are with the groundhogs. I hope you like that book, my friend. Ladies and gentlemen, Justin purchased my comedy book because here in Going Free, we also have laughs. And so my comedy book is It's a Comedy, Damn It. You can find that on my website store. That is nowhiteguiltcollectibles.com. You can also find it on Amazon. If you get it from me directly, I will sign it for you. I'm glad you liked the book, brother. Mandy says, you've now answered my question, so just ignore it. Oh, well, I'm glad I got to it without even realizing it. We must have been on some sort of a wavelength. Okay, I think we have... Greek Guy says, no white guilt is right. Thank you for that support. Zero says, just try to donate through the familiar alternative. It's down again. Did you get the other donations through these last couple of weeks? Yes. So I will have a look at it and we will fix it after the show. Something else to deal with, but we will deal with it. Another hurdle and we'll just cross it again. Carmichael, did these ancient empires founded by our race after collapse from miscegenation succeed? Did they, founded by our race after collapse from miscegenation? The ancient empires that were founded by our people, and you can see this at work, and it may or may not be true, but you can see where the degree of intermarriage has taken place, that it has effectuated white erasure. And again, it may or may not be true, and our people are gone. And then once our people are gone, the language is forgotten, the mathematics is forgotten, and then we have to go back down at a later date, and we find things like Rosetta Stones, and then we find out the old languages and tell the stories of what was there. And then because the anti-whites dominate things, they give the credit elsewhere. Jennifer P, great to see you, writes, my daughter wants to know if when you go free, if we can go with. Absolutely. You can absolutely. When we go free, you can come with me. Seaver Hamlin says, chapter 1 was awesome. What are you talking about? Which are you talking about? Go free? Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. I apologize. Put the fault with me. I will. Hold on one second. I'm just saying there's something. Maybe I can see the error that's taking place right now. Do we have a diamond? Is that what I'm reading? Let's see what we have here, ladies and gentlemen. It's not showing itself at the moment, but it's uploading. Was it JF Fox? Is that it? A big thank you to JF Fox for super chatting a diamond over on D Live. Thank you so much. Did you write anything? I see the guy throwing a diamond. Looks like another diamond. How many diamonds did you super chat, my friend? Thank you so much for that. Looks like I also got an ice cream. Wonder at the sky. Thank you so much. A few new followers over there on D Live. Tracing Trey super chatted a lemon over there. Thank you very much. Last Paleocon just super chatted a diamond on D Live. Thank you. That's fantastic. Thank you all for doing that. Okay. So Sterling Price says hello. Great to see you, my good friend. So I'm trying to find that comment that now appears to be gone, talking about Secession. Do you mean Secession? I don't see your comment anymore. We'll see about coming back to it, though. Let's see about over here on gardening. If anything's over there, I don't see that. If you all have any questions or comments, please tag me and get them in now. And because we'll be closing the stream down here shortly, I've got things I have to do before I have to get ready for the show tonight. Yes, Seaver says set up subscriptions on D Live. I have to become a member first, so I can't. I'll have to do that after the program. Rick says, can we get some more car ride thoughts? I like to see how you view things. Yeah, sure. The only problem is in my car right now is that the rear struts need to be replaced. And so they squeak. And if you know anything about cars, they are expensive. And even if I put them in myself, it is wildly time consuming and still quite expensive. Okay, so Heidi says J. Fawkes donated. Thank you for that. Thank you both. So Seaver must have been talking about It's a Comedy, Damn It. Glad you're enjoying it. It is a novella, ladies and gentlemen. So if you want a quick read, have some laughs, then grab yourself It's a Comedy, Damn It. And you see a whole nother side of No White Guilt. Raziel says, thank you for all you do, sincerely. I'm learning a lot each time. I want to purchase your books very soon. Well, thank you for that. Jennifer P. says that her little girl just turned 6. How lovely. Happy birthday, Jennifer. Happy birthday to your little girl. Don't share her name. I don't want you to risk your anonymity. But happy birthday to your little girl from No White Guilt. Okay, let's see. I'm still trying to find that comment, and it seems to have disappeared. I'm not quite sure what you meant by Secession. LG says, you're very wise for your young age. I always follow your advice. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for lying about my age. Elaine Sabatino, the great Elaine Sabatino, is here with us and writes, I'm at work, but I want to say hi. No White Guilt and family. Well, hello back to you, another great participant in the sphere for White Wellbeing. It's always wonderful to have you here. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we see the anti-whites are at work again. And they're at work again, shutting down the systems by which, well, Seaver Hamlin says, didn't see the end coming at all for It's a Comedy, Damn It. So if that's a testimony for you, then you all know you'll have an interesting read there. I also have a video up on my site where I give you I read a little bit of the book and talk a little bit about it. Dragon Lord says it was chemistry. The stream was also timely as there's a cult in the novel I'm planning. How about that? So we're right about the chemistry. Thank you, my good friend. And look at that. Is it called synchronicity? Something like that, where two things are unrelated, but they seem to go together, somehow operate together at the same. Synchronicity. I think that's the word. All right. Here's what I want to get to, the final thing. Well, and this is what I'm saying. What are we doing here? We are advocating for white well-being. That's all we're doing. We allow everyone to participate. I want people from all backgrounds. I want everyone to participate in white well-being. I want non-white people who have seen the good that has come to their immediate family members, to their peoples as a result of the work of my people and ancestors. I want them to say, you know what? I'm going to help out this guy and what they're doing. And we have that. I was attacked by this guy that had 1 million or whatever, this non-white guy subscribers. And he said, me and myself and Clarion, and he said, go check them out. Of course, he was saying, go and complain about the channel so it gets shut down. It's the dog whistle there. He doesn't actually want them to come and engage in the things I'm saying. But what ended up happening? I had, how many was it? Does anybody remember the number I gave? 3, 4 or something folks who came over because he said, go look at this evil heretic, what have you. And of course, he used other anti-white slurs. And they arrived, non-white people, and said that 3 or 4 that were non-white, and said, my God, this guy's totally legitimate. He's talking sense. I want to support what he's doing. And they stayed. They wrote me. They said, I'm of this, whatever non-white group it was, and I support what you were doing. I want the harm to end that is being inflicted on your children. I see this myself. I see it in the advertising. I want to put an end to it. Bless those people for coming over. We here don't demonize any particular group. We don't say that this group, because of that immutable characteristic, or this immutable characteristic, or a religion that they choose, for example, that makes them our victimizer. No, they make themselves our victimizers. We allow people to make that choice for themselves. They can just stay out of the way. They can support white well-being, or they can make themselves one of those who inflict harm on us. And then we just merely recognize their choice. Now, for having this completely legitimate, rational, understandable, defensible position, anti-whites are moving against me all the time to censor me from different platforms. Law enforcement has, I've been asked by law enforcement, these places I was talking about earlier, where I was doing leaflet drop testing years ago. I had law enforcement ask to speak with me. The sheriff, I'm not going to give his name, but I went and met with these people and said, well, what do you want to know? I'm passing out leaflets. I care about white people. I care about what's happening to our people. And so what we're doing is totally legitimate, lawful, and the anti-whites are still moving against us. They have made they've always been, you go back to the 80s where they hit us with these sedition laws, hit people, not us particular, but those in the white positive sphere. They hit those people, and the laws back then were nothing like they are now. Not anywhere nearly so easily could they take law like the sedition laws and apply them to us. Now, with Patriot Act and all of these things, very easy. Now with red flag laws, very easy. Now you're going to call yourself something like even a nationalist, ladies and gentlemen. The word nationalist is on that targeted violence list. We heard it right from the head of that department, and that list is tied to the terrorism list. And of course, the terrorism list is tied to all of the no travel list, no buy list, etc. So we have a position that the only way it can be made illegal is for the anti-whites to radically change the context in which we all live. And that would be, if they tried to do that, very detrimental for them. I don't see them doing that because they're strategists at the very top of the anti-white elites are not nearly that stupid. They only continue to propagandize because they have to propagandize the many millions of our people out there. So if they were to do something like that, they would radically change the context. Opportunities would open up for us that are not here today, that could make things a lot easier for us. But they can take all of these other things and say that now these things are going to be punishable in ways that heretofore were absolutely couldn't be considered. So you think that you're going to get away, someone out there might think they're going to get away with talking about having a clean nose. And I understand this guy out in Washington State who had his right to self-defense taken from him because he had a funny way that he waved and decided he was going to go to some camps and have a laugh like an idiot and talk big and go to shooting ranges and talk big about what he's going to do. But otherwise had a clean record. I understand a little bit of marijuana in the basement of his house, where in a state where it's legal, but nonetheless, they magnify the law. If you say you're going to secede, there's only violent secession as a possibility. If you say something like that, they are going to come disappear you so quickly that your head will spin. And I love all of you. I am not going to steer you in a dangerous direction. I am going to steer you in the safest direction possible. And I'm going to walk down that path myself first. So if there are any snares, if there are any punji traps, as our soldiers had to face in the Vietnam War, if there are any of these landmines, if there are anything out there, it's going to hit me first before it hits you. So I'm going to be out there first, and we're going to walk the safest path that we can walk through this anti-white jungle. Now, if others out there want to encourage you to go down paths that are going to end up getting you disappeared, arrested, killed, then that is on them. And that is on you for making the bad decision to follow them. But you're not going to get any sort of that advice from me, because I intend to win. I don't intend to be, there is no leader. This is not for glorifying any particular individual. When I'm on PWR, I call Mark Collette the leader. This is about our people. And I love all of you. It is my intense love for our people that drives me against these odds, that these anti-whites getting me censored off platform after platform after platform after platform. And I get back on again and again, driving through the night, no sleeping, because of love. That is why I'm motivated to do these things. That is where passion comes from. That is where the ability to sacrifice comes from. I'm not going to lead anybody, especially these people who have these families, who have children. God's sakes. So that's the difference between what we are talking about doing here and what is being talked about elsewhere. And keep in mind that there are going to be a lot of efforts afoot, increasingly so, that are going to try to ensnare folks into streams of thought that are going to harm you irrevocably in the end. Don't fall for any of that. And I will speak about it when they come up as need be. And one of the reasons I decided to talk about this was because there were a couple lessons here to learn. And I was talking about discord, intentional discord, and how that undermines service to white well-being last week. We have to be focused on the highest morality of what we're doing here is, does it serve white well-being? Every other virtue comes below that. They're all still elevated. They're all still lofty, but they all come below, does it serve white well-being? If an action is disrupting what we're doing, if an action is weakening us, if an action creates a headwind, if an action causes us to come under punishable and arrestable offenses by our various governments, that is all deleterious for white well-being. It is pernicious. It is harmful. And when we see such ideas and such behavior, we have to be willing to call it out, and we have to be willing to put an end to it. We have to say, no, you're not allowed to do that here. You are not going to be permitted. This is how this harms us. And you can give it up now and continue on the path to white well-being, or we can invite you to leave, and then we will watch from afar as you get punished for what you're doing. Just like when I said, and so many of you saw it firsthand, when I got into that argument last year about the Civil War stuff, and I said, all that's going to happen is people are going to end up stockpiling weapons and MREs and food in basements somewhere. Then they're going to talk to people on what they think are secure networks, and they're going to be talking to federal agents, and then they're going to go to jail. And days after, somebody just in Maryland, a state just north of me, was dragged out of his basement for that exact offense. And then we had the guy down in Texas. So all these things I'm telling you, they happen after I tell you. That's not because I have a line to Psychic Friends Network and a crystal ball, because I'm thinking about these things. Because I don't know, this is the intelligent way to go about, the only way to go about saving our kind, period. So you can choose to not heed what we're talking about here, and then you can end up suffering from it, and the rest of us will learn from that bad decision. So there was an individual, and I'm not going to say his name, that over the past couple of days, and I want you all to listen closely to this, please. And then I'll take the final comments, and if there are any super chats, I'll get those, look at entropy, and get any questions from there, and we'll wrap up. Because I've got to get to work on getting back on payment processors again. And there's an individual, I'm not going to say his name, because he has already brought on enough indignity on himself. He's brought enough indignity on himself. I don't need to make it worse. I don't want to make it worse for him. He has made some very childish, myopic, ill-conceived decisions, ill-conceived ideas, and has really defamed himself and has brought on enough indignity. Now, this individual reached out to me many months ago, and I saw him as a brother in the cause, as I see all of you, and I want to help all of my brothers and sisters in the cause. And he said that he wants to work for White Wellbeing. He wants to do all he can. He wants to make a splash in the world for White Wellbeing, for serving our people. So I made myself available. I gave him time that I don't have to give. He had personal problems, and I'm not going to be revealing any of this under any circumstance that I can see. He had personal problems that he needed to talk about. And so I felt that it was the right thing to do to mentor him. So I would talk to him while I was brushing my teeth. I would hear his personal problems. While I was working out, while I was stretching, I didn't have time to do these things. I cared enough about him to listen to his personal problems and to help him, give him advice on those. I cared enough about him to give him advice on his, we could say, professional desires to serve in the white positive sphere. He had some pretty ambitious and lofty ideas and desires. And so I gave him some advice about, getting started and making a difference. Gave him a lot of time. And I don't regret giving him time, because that's me. That's on me. That's what I do. He decided he had a falling out, and then he decided he wasn't going to make videos or participate for a number of months. I don't know why. Disappeared. Don't really care. But then he showed back up right after I did my video about Richard's rant. I did the live stream about Richard's rant. Now, I was humbled, to say the least, after that video. I don't think I've shared this with you all, but a great many of you wrote to me, far more than, I didn't expect any, but a great many of you wrote to me to thank me for how I handled that. You all wrote me and said that no one else had the class, no one else had the integrity, no one else had the courage to talk about that subject and to handle it as tactfully as I handled it. And I am honored, I am humbled that you all felt this way. And more importantly, my heartfelt thanks goes in gratitude go out to all of you who felt the need to let me know that you appreciated how I handled Richard's rant and what took place there, and specifically what was the real story, which of course is the people who are going to celebrate that audio recording. Those are your most heinous, the most monstrous victimizers of the anti-whites. And of course, that piece of filth, Milo, who released that audio, doing Richard no harm, because there's no more harm to be done to him. The only thing that it could possibly harm is my ability and your ability to protect our people, our children, our heritage, our country, our culture, our countries, our culture, Western civilization. That's all it could do. So that was the real story about Richard's rant. And I was written out of the blue, as the saying goes in the States. Maybe I shouldn't say, I need to be careful about these sayings because I know we have a very large international audience. And so it just means out of nowhere, unexpected, and truly a surprise. I was written by this person. And this person, in this private message, told me that I was one of two things. This is a person who, again, I mentored, I was kind to, I gave time I didn't have to give, made time for this person, decided to write me out of the blue and tell me that I was one of two things, a liar or a fool. And the reason why, he told me that twice in the messages, that I was a liar or a fool, one of two, because I didn't go after Richard harder than I did. That was why he reached out to me. So he was the one person of all of those. I didn't expect a single message to come to me about that particular stream, but I've received all of these messages from people delighted with the way I handled it, because this was grievous. Because you all I could think about was you all are going to be at your family functions. And you can go back and watch that video, folks, if you didn't see it, and you'll see that's what I'm talking about, that you all are going to end up at family functions or work functions or whatever, and you're going to have some jackass say to you, well, no, we're supporting white well-being. Well, we just heard this audio over here. And so I needed to provide you all with the tools to be able to speak to that situation. I didn't want you all to look stupid. That would hurt me to have you all look stupid in that moment. I want to lead you the right direction. I won't look stupid. And so I want you all to follow that path and be strong in those moments, win those conversations. So this person wrote me, said this, and I wrote back and I said, of course, that's extremely insulting. Coming from anyone, even somebody that I had kind of a relationship with that was on and off, maybe not a very great relationship. Anybody saying that would be extremely insulting, a personal insult, egregious. But to come from someone who I had mentored, who I had said kind things about, who I had given time to that I didn't have to give for his personal problems, as well as his ambitions in the cause, for that to come out of nowhere in a message to me was extremely insulting. And even though I am a forgiving guy, that is not the kind of thing that I'm going to instantly forgive. That is not, I don't roll over. I'm not here to be insulted by anyone. I know it's going to come from the anti-whites, obviously, and is meaningless. But I don't forgive them either. So I'm a forgiving guy. This is a movement of redemption. But I'm not going to forgive personal insults like this. your words have meaning when you're an adult. And a child can mouth off and say something stupid, and they're just a child. But once you're an adult, your words have meaning, and you have to pay the price. You have to deal with the consequences of the things you say and do. But it gets worse than that. This person is advocating secession. And by the way, it doesn't matter if you encase your grievous insults in a bunch of praise. That doesn't make up for the grievous insults. So that is a convenient thing to do. Everybody can see it for what it is. So you're not fooling anybody when you encase your insults in some praise, some positive things. But this individual is advocating something that is dangerous, that is going to land people in jail, that is going to put people into Waco scenarios if they talk about it, if they adhere. Hopefully, nobody would end up in an actual Waco and end up getting murdered by the federal government. But what would happen instead is that as soon as you started talking about these things and planning these things, they would raid your house and take your right to self-defense away. You would lose all of your firearms. You would lose the ability to ever protect yourself again with the tool of protection. If guns are out there and you don't have access, that means you don't have the ability to protect yourself. You can be a ninja, and somebody with a .38 snub nose will kill you in a heartbeat. So all of your years of training don't mean squat. You'll be arrested. You'll end up in jail. This is a dangerous thing. And I saw what else this individual was doing. He was insulting me as a means to goad me and others into a conversation. Just wants a conversation. Just a little insulting, just want to have a conversation. Obviously, that is plain for what it is. That manipulation is plain for what it is. If you want a conversation with me, or you want a conversation with Jared Taylor, then you pay your dues. You serve white well-being. You serve the white positive sphere in some way that earns you the right to have a conversation with the likes of Jared Taylor. Obviously, a lot less for somebody like me. He's an actual leader. I'm just a guy with a big heart doing my best for our people. You don't try to manipulate me and slander me and misrepresent me and set me up to be able to follow with what is obviously next. That, oh, what is he? What is Jason? Some sort of coward? Doesn't want to have this conversation I want to have about something violent? The guy I just wrote to goad him with he's either a liar or a fool in a personal message after he did all that he did for me. It is painfully obvious what you're doing. It is sad. It is a serious character flaw. You need to work on who you are as a person. This is a great example of what I talked about last week, the discord that is sown into a movement. For what? Self-aggrandizement? I don't know. For what? It's not possible to secede. For what? But it gets worse. Much worse. And that is the real reason for the stream today. And that is this. This individual, misguided, character-flawed individual, whatever his good qualities might be, he just demonstrated some real negative qualities. When he wrote on a public forum, on Twitter, a thread, where he said that I and all of you going free are a cult. Now that is unforgivable. Because when we say the word cult, when the average person hears the word cult, they're not thinking a group of people who love Western kind, who just want to protect our children. They're thinking about child molestation, you bastard. They're immediately thinking about forced labor. They're immediately thinking about sleep deprivation. They're immediately thinking about brainwashed people. They're immediately thinking about the worst of humanity. That is the label you're going to put on the good work that we are doing? You piece of shit. Now, I told you, I can forgive an insult to me, but there is no forgiving undermining the good work that we are doing for white well-being. Babies are being saved. Babies are being produced. People are getting off the road to suicide. People are going back to their dreams, studying at university. People are getting out of alcoholism. People are leaving abusive partners. People are getting off of heroin because of what we are doing. And you are going to jeopardize that. Then this person sends more messages to me saying, if I'm not, and I hadn't responded, saying that if I'm not trying to do something political, then isn't it just a cult? Well, if you will ever be forgiven for that, it's going to be a cold day. And we have to face, we know this without doubt, that the anti-whites out there are going to be calling any white positive group that gains any sort of steam, no matter how much light of day they shine on all of their activities, you know they're going to slander them with the word cult and all that the associations that go along with that. Marshall Applewhite and the castrating of all of the members. Jim Jones and the poisoning of everybody with the Kool-Aid. All of these different groups. The molestation and murder of children are associated with that word cult. We know we're going to have to deal with it from anti-whites. And you are going to try to goad your way by saying, you just want a conversation. Is what you're doing a cult? I just want to have a conversation. Piss off, bitch. That is exactly the kind of thing, ladies and gentlemen, for which we need to say, have a nice day. You're never welcome back. You can spend the next so many years trying to make amends, serving the white positive sphere in other ways, on your own terms, in other realms, to show that you're truly apologetic for what you have done. You will not smear us with such a label. You will not smear all of these good people watching live, watching in replay, with all of those associations, prick, just so you can try to goad your way into a conversation. You have nothing of value to say. You have done enough harm. Every person that hears anything like that about us and the work we're doing for Going Free, he specifically said, going free. Now that I think about it, going free is cultish or something like this. Now that I think about it, I could pull it up. Now that I think about it, I said, going free really seems like a cult, something like that. And then to say, I just want a conversation. Who do you think you're fooling with that? Defame us, cripple us and our ability to protect our people, our civilization, our children, and then think you're going to pretextualize it with just, oh, it's just because I want a conversation. Oh, I almost just said what I really want to say. You're not fooling anybody. You are not fooling anybody. You need to work on yourself. You came after someone who was good to you. You came after someone who, out of my own heart, wanted to help you as a person, as a brother, as a friend, in your personal life, with your personal problems, and with your ambitions when it comes to the white positive sphere. And you come after me and the work that I've invested my entire life in. You personally insult me, and then you slander the totality of what we are doing and all of these good people who have come to this work with a title like that. You have serious issues. Resolve them on your own. All right, let's see what you all have to say. Then I can get back to work with dealing with the anti-whites who are attacking all the work that we're doing all the time. Shouldn't have to deal with people who claim to be in the white positive sphere ascribing to us all of those associations that come with such a title. Yeah, exactly. Gandalf White, too. When people hear cult, they hear Jonestown. Exactly. That's exactly what they hear. Gandalf the White also says, attack the credibility of organizations that would slander white well-being. Yeah, I mean, I think the individual, J.T. Smith writes, love and honor, Jason. Well, thank you so much. It gets me really angry when efforts are made that make it difficult for us to serve white well-being. That's the personal insult was big, considering I have done so much for this, help this individual. But this talking about us as a cult, that was far too far. That is beyond despicable. Anybody that would say such a thing like us, that person has revealed his credibility. Rest assured. You don't need to hear another word. And like I said, this is a movement of redemption. If he wants to go off for years and prove that he was make amends for the harm he's trying to do right now and do good things for our people, let him do so. And we can reevaluate that in the future. But as for now, he has burned all the bridges. And you all, you think about this, ladies and gentlemen. When he says going free is a cult, white well-being is a cult, when he says that, he's talking about you, not just me. He's talking about you. If you are benefiting by going free, if you are investing yourself and healing yourself, accessing your potentials by going free, he's talking about you. He's saying you are a cult member. This is absolutely unforgivable. It would be, if he had said it to me in private, I would just say, I would write back and say, you have demonstrated that you have no class, that you have no character. You need to go away. Don't write me anymore and work on yourself. You've got a lot broken inside of you, buddy. And then once you have cured yourself, once you have treated yourself for these black character flaws that you have, then we can reevaluate. But to go public with this on a public forum where other people have seen and read that, do not doubt, ladies and gentlemen, that anti-whites have already grabbed that tweet. They have already screenshotted it, and they are going to use it in articles in the future. They're going to say, one of their own says, you watch. Rachel B says, could he be an undercover Fed? Who knows? I'm not going to say that he is, but I could be wrong. All right, let me make sure there are no other. And then we're going to close out. It is 7. I always go longer with you all. It's kind of like I want to, if I have the opportunity to have your ear, I want to give you as much strength, as much power as I can convey to you. I want you to be strong in the world. I want you to be your best so that we can be our best, because I know that my well-being is only going to be achievable by way of our group's well-being. Your well-being is only going to be achievable by way of our group's well-being. And what composes the group? The individual. So that is why we are on this path. That is why we are focused on real things. That is why I get more than a little vexed when somebody says things that are going to be used to harm us. All right. So it looks like, let me jump on over here to Entropy. Machiavelli sucks, super chatted $1.99, my dear friend, a great participant. Actually, I don't meet white anti-whites. Oh, that's, well, you live in a great area. I mean, all the rest of us have run into plenty white anti-whites. Well, I might have to move out wherever you are, my friend. Seth, or wait a second. Maybe that has like a double meaning, like you only live amongst non-white people. Seth Jones, super chatting here on Entropy. Thank you, my dear friend. $10. Your loyalty to our people inspires me. Please keep our South African brothers and sisters in your heart and prayers. Thank you. I absolutely do. They are our people. They are not white people in South Africa. That is us. So they are absolutely in my prayers. I think of them often. I think of what's happening to our people in Rhodesia, all of these places. All right, I got George Mountain, Grand Celestial Night. And all right, we got all of those. We have some questions over here. Andre, hey, Jason, I'm a pianist and composer studying at a conservatory. Would be interested in composing a musical work dedicated to white well-being. I wish you all the best. Please do. You can reach out to me right now. Probably the best way is if you're on Twitter, you can direct message me on Twitter. You could also go to the store, and I'm going to be getting everybody who has messaged me by way of the store. I'm catching up on all of my messages. So I will be getting to your messages. You can go to the store, and if you sign up for, that's nowhiteguiltcollectibles.com. If you sign up for the, I guess the mailers, you get an opportunity to send me a message. Let's talk. Let's work together. I would be delighted with a work like that. Fernell, the great Fernell, rising star. Do you consider segregation a similar situation as secession? Is it equally as non-viable? Segregation, a similar situation. My brother, it is a question of power. And do we have the power or not? Many white people, the problem is, and this is something that you really have to pull yourself up, and it's difficult, trust me, I know, it is very difficult to not put our thoughts into the thoughts of the average anti-white, certainly into the thoughts of a anti-white, non-white. We have for far too long had this, and it's just instinctual to us, this idea that if we just go to those other people out there with a reasonable argument, then they'll be reasonable. But my friend, they're not going to be reasonable. There is nothing that is reasonable enough. There is nothing that will placate them. There is no amount, you cannot say to the anti-whites, the phrase here in the States is, you have your backyard, I have mine. And that means, ladies and gentlemen, that they can do what they're going to do in their backyard. You can do what you're going to do in your backyard. Everybody's happy. That is not how the anti-whites work. We're not going to be able to go to, and in this context, the question of voting came up the other day, and I had to answer a question there. Please understand that we're talking about this context, where we are right this moment. We can effectuate a change in the context in which there might be different opportunities, in which perhaps segregation, either under the definition that we see it today or a different definition, might be possible. But where we are today, the context we are today, segregation as we define it today, or apartheid as it is defined today, is impossible. It is as impossible as secession. You're not going to be able to go to the authorities, the anti-whites who dominate, and say, I have a really reasonable request. You just let us live over here, and you let them live over there, separate but equal, as they used to say down in the Deep South. That's not going to be accepted. They don't want you to exist, much less have a town of your own where you could flourish. So that is the reality that we're up against. They want to white erase us. And that's a good thing that we have acknowledged the reality, because now we can plot a proper course to our success. So as I say, same thing when it comes to voting. Voting as it is understood today, to cast a vote and what a vote means and what a vote effectuates, as it is defined today, and the definition is actually varies a little bit from country to country, but as it is defined today in the context we are in, is impossible. Now, in a future context, a context that we effectuate, or a context that perhaps is forced upon us, perhaps by the event horizon that I'm talking about, a natural disaster, who knows, the people who are actually the most powerful people. Maybe there is a falling out there, and there opens up a new context. Voting in a new context, either under the definition as we understand voting today, or a new definition, something else that we can't even predict right now, might be a possibility in that new context. So perhaps the same thing with segregation. We have to work with what's in front of us. We have to be the best prepared we can for the opportunities as they arrive. So just know that there isn't any amount. I know we see it in ourselves. We would, if somebody came to us with a really reasonable thing and they said, look, buddy, I know we've been at odds for a while, but can we just X, Y, or Z and say peace? That's never going to happen with the anti-whites. We have Deters North, Jason. Will you please speak on the ancient empires of Rome, Greece, India, and Persia? Let me see, all collapsed from miscegenation. Did this ancient empire founded by our white race, did they, is that the word you want to use? I will speak to all that. That's be a great show to actually talk about all of that. It's very interesting. Those subjects, and we have to be careful. It might be something that we have to do off of YouTube, because I'm just not going to say the whole time. It may or may not be true. I mean, there is DNA evidence and all of this, paintings, stories handed down. So that would be a very interesting. Are you asking me if they succeeded? Did they succeed? They didn't succeed in that they white erased themselves. No, they didn't. There are a lot of errors that are made, and I talk about those in Prometheus Rising and put it into allegorical form in a narrative, and you can glean a lot of truth from that about what went wrong and when it went wrong. Yonash, have you ever heard of cargo cults? No. I'll have to look that up after the show. Very interesting. We had a couple more super chats that came in. Ursa Major, $5. Thank you very much for that kind super chat. Thank you for thinking about the Afrikaners. Well, we absolutely do. In fact, I was reached out to, oh boy, I just forgot her name, the young lady who we did a show on. And this is what happens when you drive all night without sleep. But her mother reached out to me. She was murdered, unfortunately, in South Africa. She was standing up for our people and talking about the farm murders. And regrettably, her helper, and this is one of the problems, of course, that our people have always made, is that they want to have these other groups around, and they want to depend on them. They want to have some sort of symbiotic relationship with them. And it is an error. And it was her most trusted helper who is the one that is arrested for her murder. And only the devil knows what else took place before she was actually finally able to escape the horror. But her mother reached out to me. It was very touching. And we had a great conversation. So I'm definitely thinking about South Africa, and I will continue to do so. Exo's Paradigm, 10 Australian dollars. Those are some of the best dollars. I was subjected to a attempted conversion by a cab driver the other night. I refuted all his attacks against our culture. I received no answers, just questions. NWG helps me listen, think, respond, proud. Thank you so much. Thank you, brother. That is an excellent testimony. Thank you so very much. Those words are worth $1 million to all of us. Thank you for the activism for our people, service to white well-being, and your willingness to share this with all of us so that we can be inspired. So that when I go out and I speak to folks, I am infused with the strength that all of you all give me, and you all should feel this way about each other. When you go out, you are not alone. This is one of the things that anti-whites do more than anything else with their psychological warfare that they inflict on our people, is they need you to believe that you are alone. And tell me, ladies and gentlemen, haven't you felt alone? Haven't you felt all alone in your thoughts? That has been done on purpose. It is a mean pathogen. You are infected. Those feelings that are crippling you are called white noir. You are suffering as a consequence. But the blessing is, the beauty is, the great white light is that you are not alone, that a great many millions agree with you, that the ground is becoming richer and richer. More and more of our people are willing to listen to what's happening today. The reason why I was talking about on PWR, we were rushing, so I didn't get to finish my point, but we were talking about how you have these guys going up and young ladies asking questions of these anti-whites on the right. And there's a bit of a misconception for all of these young people with very short memories that this is the first time that this has ever been done. Anybody's ever gone out and questioned the anti-whites on the right. Wrong. This has been done far more fervently. There are still videos of it. People have taken the VHS videos and put them on the internet. They put them on DVDs. I've seen them. I've read the stories about the violent altercations when people would stand up at universities at questions and far more vehemently and aggressively demand to know what is going on with these anti-whites on the right. Why are they supporting X, Y, or Z when supposedly this is what they want, which is what is good for our people? And what happened? Well, they were dragged out. The ground at that time wasn't as fertile as it is today. So those who are asking these questions today, rather than being original, they are keeping alive a valiant trend. And I think that's true. And it's much more valiant than trying to say we made this up when it's been happening for a long time. And they're keeping alive this valiant activity of questioning these anti-whites on the right. The difference now is that people are now willing to listen. Whereas in the past, you had a lot of our people who thought, oh, it's so improper, it's so impolitic to insult them and demand the truth from them and put them on the spot. That's not what we do as good white people in whatever country it was. And you all have heard that. Well, fortunately, that's dying. It's unfortunate in that things might have to become a lot less polite before they get polite again, but that is the reality of the world. So thank you very much for those questions. Let's see over here. I'm going to check these other platforms really quickly, make sure everything is okay. And then we will be heading off so that I can get right back on in under 2 hours. I will be back with Semiagog and Jared George. And we'll be talking about the Groypers. Bad name. Yes, Peter. Brilliant. Annette was her name. Beautiful woman. And she beautifully dedicated her life to our people and getting the word out about these horrific tortures in South Africa of our people. And talk about a betrayal of her personal helper, or by her personal helper. So we remember Annette, and when we are working in service to white well-being, it is the spirit of such people, such women, such men that continue to drive us, and are part of the reason why I get so angry when childish people decide they're going to try a childish and extremely dangerous, deleterious thing to get a word in and slander us, because they're slandering Annette Kennelly, her memory. They're slandering all of those people that, Annette had our book. Annette had Born Guilty was the rumor. And her mother, I'm in regular conversation with her mother. So when he does something like that, he's slandering the memory of that woman and the work she did. It's just a cult. Well, all right, let me make sure. It looks like we're good over here. And I will see here, make sure we're good here. Don't want to miss anybody. And we will be getting, Polygon says, sharp tie. Thank you so much. CGL Rockwell says, hail, Jason. Well, thank you. Hail in return, my dear friend. Make sure I didn't miss anybody. Heidi says, don't forget the chest. Let's do the chest. We're going to give away some money over on D Live. And looks like I missed Robert Brown's super chat. Curious. $4.99. Thank you, my good friend, for that super chat to White Wellbeing and all this great work that people like Annette Kennelly did for our folks. All right, I think we have just about everything. Spike says, I'm jamming that No White Guilt song at work right now. Is that the Fernald one? It's fantastic. All of these artists that are making music in the service of white well-being, they are just masters. I haven't heard a terrible song yet. I'm sure one will get written, but we won't necessarily put that one out front for newcomers to hear or see. So let's see. Make sure I haven't missed anybody. CGL Rockwell says we need to know who to avoid. I'm not going to say the person. He, as I say, he's brought enough indignity upon himself. But if someone in the live chat or in the thread wants to name the person to protect others, I mean, just know that if somebody is trying to advocate something like secession, that they're having a less than clear thought at the moment, might not be totally sane, might not be totally well thought through. And if you become a participant, you're potentially going to get onto a list, lose your right to self-defense. I can only imagine in some countries. Could you imagine in Germany with the laws there? Could you imagine in Australia? You're not even allowed to wear a belt that can be used as an offensive weapon. Could you imagine in Australia if you started talking about secession seriously and started planning? You can't wear a belt that can be used in self-defense. Rachel says, I understand right away you were angry because you were standing up for us. Well, thank you for that. Mandy says, no white guilt. Next stream, have a picture of Kool-Aid. I should. We'll do a little bit of good-natured mocking That's a great idea, actually, Mandy. I don't have anything. Like, can somebody run up to the store for me? Grab me some Kool-Aid. Steven says, sounds like the person I was talking about stopped taking his psychiatric meds. Those were all very unwise decisions. So, and folks, when it comes to medication, I want you, a lot of people I've heard from people over the years, and I keep saying this is a movement of redemption. I've had people come to me and say, I didn't think I could be a part of what's happening. This is in years past, not now. But before they heard of White Wellbeing, before actually coming and talking to me. And they came to me and said, I didn't think I could be a part because of this health issue, or because a great granddad thus and such was non-white or something. And they have imbibed the anti-white narrative that you cannot serve white well-being unless you are 87 generations and absolutely no recurring disease in your family. That's all lies to prevent us from growing. It's the same thing when it comes to support shaming. It's just another way of roadblocking us. It's just another thing. So I've had people say, worried about the medications that they're on. Everything from antidepressants to diabetic medication and everything. If you need a medicine to get by in this world, to make you a success, you're an adult, take that medicine. If it works for you, take that medicine. There's nothing wrong with getting by and being effective and functioning well if you have to take a medication to do so. I think some people think that marijuana serves them in that sense. Well, take that medicine. Don't drive me anywhere while you're on that medicine, that particular medicine, but use what you have to use that's lawful, wherever it's lawful to use it. Use what you have to use to be able to function and to be on top of your game, and there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. The problem, of course, where the objection arises is when people start administering meds to children who don't need them, genuinely don't need them. I mean, they're now handing them out like, I guess it's trite to say like candy. They're handing them out more like interracial videos, commercials, television. I mean, that's how prominent it is. Ooga Booga says, you have attracted the best people to you, and we all have your back, brother. Not because we are a cult, because we recognize you are the best hope for our people. We will always back you. No, I thank you for that. I as an individual, am just a guy with a big heart that loves our people, and I'm going to keep going and going. And I learned how to have a big heart from one of my brothers who didn't quite have the exact same athletic abilities for me. I'll try to tell the story one of these days, but he didn't exactly have the exact same, didn't have the foot speed, didn't have the agility, didn't have the vertical leap. He had some health issues as well from the very beginning. You can read about it a bit in my book, Born Guilty. And he had a heart the size of a killer whale. And he was able to excel like you wouldn't believe. And I'm just imitating him. I'm trying to have the biggest heart I can for our people. I'm going to keep going no matter where I lack, where I'm deficient, where I'm not enough, where, like all of you, I'm just going to keep going. And we now have the curative contagion. We will continue to make this happen together. So I thank you, though, for those kind words. Very kind of you. Gandalf says, I'm sure you have homeschoolers in these circles. I hope you would consider featuring some people who've done it on a show sometime. Actually, we do. We have Clarion on, and we will have her back again soon. She's a wonderful lady. She helped in part with the second edition of Go Free, and she actually speaks to other families now as well who homeschool. She goes in and gives kind of lessons to them. We'll have her back, and we'll talk about that more. And it would be a wonderful thing in the future to develop a curricula or develop curricula for the different levels of education as far as we can take students, our children, to protect them from anti-whiteism at schools. Because as she points out, and as we've noted from other mothers and fathers, There's no place where you can send your child where they're not being brainwashed, where they're not being infected with mean pathogens. The most expensive schools, it's happening. The basest public schools, it's happening. The religious schools, it's happening. Sometimes at the religious schools, it's worse. Gandalf says, happy to have Heidi and Clary in here. Yes, indeed. So am I. Brilliant people. Okay, I think that's just about it. Let me jump over here, make sure we have this finished off. And I have to somehow get Kool-Aid for not tonight, but for some other stream. It's been a magnificent time as always, ladies and gentlemen. I love being with you all. We are going to be the people who take us from here to that new context. We are going to be the people who are able to take advantage of those new opportunities as they are presented to us. So, looks like, yep, the anti-whites are at work again. Let's jump over here to D Live and let's see, who did I miss? I will go ahead and release the chest. Now, the more you engage, okay. Well, when I click the chest, it just says treasure chest. The more you engage in the live stream, the more lemon the chest accumulates. Chest rewards will be distributed when the streamer opens it. I'm the streamer. I'm clicking it. Why is it not working? I want to give these people money. Let me see really quickly. How many of you all are going to join us later at 9 for our conversation about the Groypers? White Rider just leapt in with a $5 super chat, met with the guys from a supposed pro-white organization. They were definitely feds. They tried to trick me, but because of the lexicon, I beat them. God bless you. That is awesome. That is fantastic. What a victory, ladies and gentlemen. What an absolute victory. Well done. Well done, White Rider. Thank you so much for sharing that with a super chat. That is magnificent. They are going to be out there. These disruptors, they could be from the federal government. They could be from state government, local law enforcement. They could be working for any of these powerful anti-white organizations, very wealthy ones. You know the names. They work with organizations like YouTube. They could be working for them. When they start talking about things that are going to land you in jail, you know it for what it is. If you're going for it, you know it for what it is, and you can get the hell out of there. So thank you so much for that, sharing that with all of us. How magnificent. We just saved somebody. White Rider, who knows what would have happened to you? You could have ended up like that guy in Maryland. When is he going to ever get out of jail? You could end up with like that guy in Texas. When is he ever going to get out of jail? And for what? For being set up. For being set up. Okay, they're saying, Heidi says I need to log in, but I am logged in. I don't know how to log in again. Let's see. Says I'm logged in. Does it say that I'm not logged in? I mean, maybe if I log out and log back in. Can you believe that this site is actually preventing me from giving you all money? Maybe it's a glitch, I guess, on their platform. Well, I'll be on again a little bit later. Wait. Now it's going to work. It was a glitch. Distribute awards. Okay. Is it happening? It just said my distribution was too soon. Oh, I guess maybe it's happening. It wrote on the screen that I couldn't distribute anything because it was too close to the previous time that I distributed, but it worked. Hey, and Poseidon got some. All right. Oh, Tipsy McStagger is in there. Tracy is in. So fantastic. It worked. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, it's been fantastic. Let me just make sure really quickly we didn't get any final second. Okay. Seth Jones asking, what happened to Doolittle? Interesting question. Gandalf says, I was proud you stood up to Kurt Doolittle. It turned me on to how much people are trying to harm white people, even as they pretend to care for white people. Well, exactly. A person of European descent asks, where is the discussion in the Groyper, or for the Groypers happening? Right here at 9 o'clock. We will be streaming again, and we will be talking about the Groypers, some tips for them and some observations. Ooga says, in the Santa White Hell, having no white guilt on our side is a true blessing, and I think all of us here recognize this. Thank you. That's very kind. Thank you for being here with us. Severus asks, have I found out how to withdraw? No. From D Live? No, my friend. We have to look into all of that. We have to correct these other censored off platforms again, payment processors. But we will find a way to get back. So I want to thank you all for being here. Just to summarize and bring it all back to what's really important. And that is this. The highest morality for us has to be service to white well-being. If something is going to undermine service to white well-being, that is something we reject. So if it is a disruption, and you know the difference, if you're an adult, and unless you're 12, well, even when I was 12, I could tell the difference. Unless you're 7 or something, if someone wants to have a constructive conversation about something, they're going to say, well, I see where you're coming from, or I understand what you're saying. I'd like to push back against that a little bit because I think, and here are my points, and they're going to lay it out in logical order, and they're going to be respectable, and they're going to say, look, I want white well-being. I'm serving white well-being. Here's where I think you have an incorrect assessment, or maybe a little wrong, or here's where I think your assessment is right, but your prescription is wrong. We know what that looks like when someone is being legitimate with construction or constructive argument. When someone starts burning things down with, this is a cult, let's have a conversation about it. You shouldn't have to have 2015 vision to see what's going on there. You could still have the Coke bottle glasses and see what's going on there. That is immensely destructive. And such reckless, unreasonable, irrational behavior is something that you have to be very cautious about. Highest morality is service to white well-being. We will be good to each other. We will disagree. There will be times when some of us think we really have to do A, and others think we really have to do B, and we will hash it out, and we will come to what is the most intelligent course of action together. And with that, I love you all. Let's go free.